The vanishing self-wish. Sometimes, there comes a moment in life when the weight of existence feels unbearable. The noise, the expectations, the constant gaze of others, it all becomes too much. In that silent, hidden corner of the mind, a thought flickers. What if I could just disappear? Not in a dramatic or destructive way, but quietly, softly, without a trace, like a whisper fading in the wind. This is the vanishing self-wish. It is not a cry for help, nor a desperate act of rebellion, but a complex, deeply human desire to simply cease being noticed, to escape the relentless pressure of being seen and judged. This wish, to vanish, holds a strange comfort. It promises relief from the chaos, the pain, and the relentless self-scrutiny that can feel like a prison. Many have experienced it, even if only fleetingly. Perhaps you have sat in a crowded room yet felt utterly invisible, not because no one saw you, but because the act of existing there felt like a burden. The world seems to demand a constant performance of self, a mask carefully crafted to meet expectations. When the performance becomes exhausting, the wish to disappear can emerge as a balm. It is a surrender to silence, a desire to slip out of the spotlight of life. This vanishing is not about ending life, but about ending presence, about erasing the constant demand to be something, someone, somewhere. It is about the freedom to simply be without scrutiny. Psychologically, this desire is layered and complex. It stems from feelings of invisibility and alienation, but also from an overwhelming need for peace. When the self feels fractured by trauma, rejection, or relentless failure, the vanishing self-wish can feel like the only refuge. It is a defense mechanism against the pain of being misunderstood or unseen for who you truly are. The mind, exhausted by effort and expectation, seeks to protect itself by withdrawing, shutting down, or dissolving into the background. This desire is neither shameful nor rare. It is a silent echo in the hearts of many who struggle with loneliness, depression, or deep existential fatigue. Consider the example of someone navigating a world that feels hostile or indifferent. They may wear a mask of smiles and success, but inside, the self feels hollow, fragmented. The pressure to perform, to prove worth, to maintain connection becomes unbearable. The vanishing self-wish whispers that if only they could dissolve quietly, no one would demand more. This thought, paradoxically, offers comfort rather than fear, a temporary reprieve from the battle of existence. Yet, this wish also carries risk. While it offers solace, it can also deepen isolation. The act of disappearing, even mentally, can close the doors to healing, connection, and growth. When the self vanishes, the world moves on, unaware. Relationships can erode, opportunities fade, and the mind risks sinking deeper into solitude. The challenge lies in recognizing this wish without surrendering to it completely. It is a signal, a call to listen, to understand the pain beneath, and to find new ways to heal that do not demand disappearance but gentle presence. History and literature are filled with echoes of this vanishing self-wish. The poet who hides in shadows, the philosopher who retreats from society, the countless souls who have disappeared into anonymity seeking refuge. Each story is a testament to the human struggle between visibility and invisibility, between the need to be seen and the desperate longing to be unseen. This paradox is deeply woven into the fabric of identity. From a neuroscientific perspective, the brain's response to chronic stress and social exclusion can fuel this vanishing impulse. When threatened, the brain activates survival mechanisms: fight, flight, or freeze. The vanishing self-wish resembles the freeze response, a shutdown designed to protect the organism by becoming less noticeable, less vulnerable. The body and mind seek safety in invisibility. In some cases, this manifests as social withdrawal or dissociation, a protective haze that muffles pain and interaction. Real-life examples of this phenomenon abound. People suffering from social anxiety may feel the vanishing self-wish intensely, as each social interaction becomes a battleground of fear and exhaustion. Those facing burnout in high-pressure environments might fantasize about dropping out, escaping to a quiet place where they no longer have to perform. Survivors of trauma sometimes recount moments when disappearing felt like the only way to survive the unbearable pain. Even everyday people, overwhelmed by the noise and pace of modern life, can find themselves wishing to simply dissolve, if only for a moment, into silence. This wish is also reflected in digital culture, the silent retreat into online anonymity or the temptation to erase one's digital footprint, to become a ghost in the machine. The desire to vanish is not only physical but also virtual, a response to the hypervisibility and exposure demanded by social media and constant connectivity. The vanishing self-wish, in this sense, is both ancient and modern, a timeless cry for peace in an age that never rests. But what if the vanishing self-wish is not the end? What if it is the beginning of a deeper journey toward self-understanding and healing? This desire to disappear can be a doorway to confronting the shadows within, to recognizing the parts of the self that have been silenced or neglected. By acknowledging this wish, by giving it space without judgment, one can start to rebuild a sense of self that is less burdened by external expectations and more rooted in authentic presence. Therapeutic approaches today encourage embracing these moments of invisibility as opportunities rather than failures. Mindfulness, self-compassion, and gradual reconnection with others can transform the vanishing self-wish from a retreat into a passage toward wholeness. Instead of disappearing into nothingness, the self can learn to exist gently, with acceptance and resilience. The vanishing self-wish is not a sign of weakness but a profound testament to the human condition. It reveals the deep tensions between visibility and invisibility, connection and solitude, presence and absence. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest courage is not in shining brightly, but in allowing ourselves the grace to be unseen, unheard, and still, at least for a time. Yet, even in the deepest shadows of this wish lies a spark of hope. Because the wish to vanish is born of pain, but also of a yearning for peace. That peace, when sought with care and support, can lead to renewal. The self, once fragmented and tired, can find new ways to shine, not by loudness or performance, but by quiet authenticity and gentle being. So, if you ever find yourself wishing to vanish, know that this wish is part of a larger story, a story of struggle, resilience, and the search for peace. It is an invitation to look inward, to understand your pain, and to find pathways toward healing that honor your need for quiet without sacrificing your essential presence. The vanishing self-wish may feel like an escape, but it can also be a step toward a deeper embrace of who you truly are, beyond the gaze of others and the demands of the world. In that silent place, where the wish to disappear softly whispers, there is also the possibility of awakening. Not as a ghost lost in the shadows, but as a soul gently returning, whole, authentic, and finally free. Replaceable to the core. You wonder if everyone who says they care could simply swap you out with anyone else and feel no emptiness at all. This thought, unsettling and profound, cuts deep into the core of your existence, stirring a quiet dread that hums beneath the surface of everyday interactions. What does it mean to be truly replaceable? To be viewed as just another face in a crowd, interchangeable, dispensable, as though your unique presence is no more significant than a passing shadow? The ache of this question is not just about feeling overlooked or undervalued. It is about the fragile thread of identity and connection that holds us tethered to one another and to ourselves. When someone says they care, it creates an expectation, a promise of significance, of unique value. Yet, beneath these words can lurk the fear that these feelings are superficial, fleeting, and ultimately replaceable. It's a fear that your presence, your quirks, your pain, and your love could be easily substituted without loss, like a spare part in a machine. But this fear strikes at a primal level. Humans crave belonging and recognition. To feel replaceable is to feel invisible, as if your soul could be swapped out without a ripple. Consider the experience of being replaced, not just in the literal sense but emotionally. The pain of watching someone you love grow distant, or feel as if they found a better version of you in another person, leaves a deep scar. It is a form of rejection more complex than mere absence, because it carries the implication that your worth is conditional, limited, and ultimately, not unique. In a world that values individualism yet often treats people like commodities, this paradox gnaws at the heart. Psychologists explain this feeling through attachment theory. The bonds we form early in life shape our sense of security in relationships. When those bonds feel fragile or conditional, we internalize the fear of being replaced. This is why moments of abandonment, betrayal, or neglect resonate so profoundly, even if the replacement is not literal. The mind extrapolates. If I can be replaced in love or friendship, what does that say about me? It whispers that I am insufficient, unworthy, or ultimately dispensable. This feeling of replaceability is amplified in modern life, where technology and social media create illusions of connection but often deepen isolation. Online, we can be friends with hundreds or thousands, yet feel more alone than ever. The sheer volume of connections dilutes intimacy and amplifies the fear that no one truly sees you. Your story, your struggles, your laughter can be lost in the endless scroll, replaced by the next notification or new friend. This relentless interchangeability of attention fuels the internal question, am I replaceable to the core? The emotional toll of this question manifests in various ways. It can breed a sense of disconnection, loneliness, or depressive thought patterns. When you feel replaceable, your motivation to invest in relationships can wane. Why try if your presence is not genuinely valued? You might find yourself withdrawing, creating emotional distance to protect against inevitable hurt. Or conversely, you might cling too tightly, desperate to prove your uniqueness and secure your place, which can strain bonds further. Yet, this fear also opens a door to profound self-reflection. What if the feeling of being replaceable is not a verdict on your true worth but a signal, an invitation to reclaim your identity beyond external validation? To recognize that your value is not solely determined by others' perceptions but by the essence of your being? This is not easy, for humans are inherently social creatures, but it is crucial. In literature and art, this theme of replaceability recurs, echoing our collective unease. Think of the tragic loneliness of characters who feel invisible or interchangeable, like Kafka's Gregor Samsa transformed into an insect, visible yet utterly replaceable in the eyes of those who once loved him. Or the existential musings of writers like Sartre, who grappled with the idea that people might be seen merely as objects or roles to be filled. But even in these shadows, there is light. The awareness of replaceability can push us toward deeper authenticity. When we confront this fear head-on, we may find the courage to live in ways that affirm our uniqueness, even if others fail to recognize it fully. It's a call to nurture self-compassion and self-acceptance, to anchor our worth internally rather than externally. Relationships, then, become a mirror, reflecting not just how others see us but how we see ourselves. When we feel replaceable, it's often because our internal narrative has absorbed messages of inadequacy. Changing that narrative is a radical act of self-love, one that rewrites the story of our connection to the world. It allows us to approach others with openness, free from the desperation of needing to prove our irreplaceability. On a biological level, humans are wired for social bonds. They release oxytocin, the love hormone, during close, genuine connections. This chemistry underlines the importance of feeling seen and valued uniquely. When those bonds fracture or feel interchangeable, it disrupts this chemistry, causing emotional pain akin to physical injury. The brain registers social rejection as a threat, triggering stress responses that can linger. Consider examples from everyday life. When a close friend stops responding, or a partner becomes distant, the shadow of replaceability creeps in. The mind races, imagining substitutes, wondering if the connection was ever genuine. But often, these feelings reveal more about our inner fears than the reality of the relationship. People are imperfect, attachments shift and change, but that doesn't mean your existence is without worth or impact. Sometimes, we also see replaceability in the workplace or social settings, where people are treated as cogs in a larger machine. This can foster burnout, dissatisfaction, and a fractured sense of self. The antidote here lies in finding meaning beyond the roles assigned, connecting with personal values and passions that no one else can fulfill in the same way. It's vital to remember that being replaceable, in some contexts, does not negate your inherent worth. Even if roles or titles shift, the essence of who you are, your thoughts, emotions, memories, and the imprint you leave on others, remains uniquely yours. Each human life is an irreplaceable mosaic of experience and influence. In fact, the very fear of replaceability is a sign of the deep connections you value. It reveals how profoundly you care and how much you long for authentic belonging. These feelings, painful as they are, can fuel growth, inviting you to explore how to cultivate deeper bonds and how to cultivate inner resilience. Ultimately, to feel replaceable to the core is to confront the paradox of human existence. We are both infinitely unique and, in some ways, part of a vast, interconnected web of life where roles and faces come and go. Embracing this paradox allows you to find peace, not by convincing yourself you are indispensable to everyone, but by recognizing that your existence matters, even if only to yourself and those who truly see you. You might not control others' feelings or actions, but you do hold the power to nurture your own sense of worth and belonging. This means building relationships based on authenticity rather than fear, allowing vulnerability without losing yourself, and accepting that sometimes connections change without negating the impact you had. So, the question lingers, if you could be replaced, what does that really mean? Perhaps it's a challenge to live fully and genuinely, to be so real that replacement becomes impossible. not because others cling out of fear, but because your presence enriches their lives in a way no one else can replicate. To be replaceable is a fear that taps into our deepest need for connection and significance. But it is also an opportunity, an invitation to anchor your identity not in external validation but in the undeniable truth of your lived experience. You are more than a role, more than a label, more than a passing presence. You are a singular constellation of memories, feelings, and actions that no one else can mirror. And in this truth lies a quiet power. The power to accept impermanence without despair, to embrace your uniqueness without arrogance, and to reach out into the world with the courage to be seen, fully and unapologetically, for exactly who you are. This realization doesn't erase the ache of replaceability, but it transforms it. The emptiness it threatens becomes a space to fill with self-compassion, authentic connection, and a renewed sense of belonging. It reminds you that even if others could swap you out, your essence is irreplaceable, and that alone is enough to keep moving forward. Secretly rooting for chaos, you catch yourself in quiet moments, a secret wish stirring deep inside, a hope that everything might collapse, unravel, fall apart. Not out of malice or despair, but because the relentless effort of pretending to keep it all together has grown too heavy. The facade of control, the endless performance of strength, the tightrope walk over chaos. Sometimes, you long for the collapse to come, to finally let go of the exhausting act. This hidden rooting for chaos is a profound, deeply human response to the weight of living. From the outside, your life may seem orderly, stable, even enviable. But inside, the pressure to maintain this image can feel like carrying the world on your shoulders. You are the fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who masks cracks with smiles, who smooths every wrinkle in the fabric of your day. But the tension builds, the breath shortens, and beneath the surface, a quiet rebellion grows, a yearning for release. This yearning is not weakness, it is honesty. It is the soul's way of saying, enough. The chaos you secretly root for is not destruction for destruction's sake, but freedom disguised as ruin. It promises a breaking point where the act can end, where masks can fall away, and where you can finally be seen, not as the perfect version you've crafted, but as the fragile, flawed, aching human you truly are. Think of the person who carries burdens no one knows, responsibilities that never cease, expectations that suffocate. They smile and nod, but inside, they dream of the day when the structures will crumble, when the carefully maintained order will dissolve, and they will no longer have to pretend. They imagine chaos not as terror, but as liberation, a chaotic reset button on a life that has become too rigid, too controlled. The paradox is that chaos is terrifying, yet deeply seductive. It threatens security, predictability, and comfort, but it also offers possibility, honesty, and transformation. When you root for chaos, you are inviting the unknown to shake your foundations, to tear down the walls you've built around your vulnerabilities. You are craving a moment of raw truth amid the polished surface. History and literature are filled with souls who have faced this internal battle. The artist overwhelmed by expectations, longing for a breakdown to spark genuine creation. The leader weighed down by responsibility, secretly wishing for upheaval to free them from the chains of perfection. The caregiver who never stops giving, yearning for collapse so they might finally rest, finally be cared for. This secret rooting for chaos often remains unspoken because society values control and composure. Vulnerability is seen as weakness, breakdowns as failure. So you hold the desire inside, isolating it, ashamed or afraid. Yet it pulses beneath, influencing your thoughts and feelings in subtle, powerful ways. Understanding this yearning can be a turning point. It reveals the immense cost of constant control and the deep human need for authenticity and rest. You can begin to see chaos not as an enemy, but as a messenger, calling you to acknowledge your limits, to embrace imperfection, to invite change. Healing starts with permission, permission to feel overwhelmed, permission to falter, permission to stop pretending. It means creating space for vulnerability, seeking support, and trusting that you can survive the unraveling. Chaos, when met with courage, becomes a doorway to growth rather than destruction. You might not want the collapse to be total or permanent. You want the release it symbolizes, a chance to breathe, to reset, to rebuild on more honest foundations. The chaos you secretly root for is a cry for balance, for integration of all parts of yourself, the controlled and the wild, the strong and the fragile. So when the thought arises, do not judge it. Listen deeply. It speaks truth about your exhaustion and your humanity. Embrace the longing for release as a guide toward self-compassion and renewal. Know that you are not alone in this secret wish, and that through the chaos, new life can emerge. Because sometimes, the only way forward is through the breaking open, the surrender to chaos that allows the soul to breathe, to heal, and to be free. Love feels like imprisonment. You sometimes fantasize that loving someone is just another way to lock yourself in a cage you'll never escape. This feeling doesn't come from a place of cynicism or bitterness, but from a raw and aching truth that many dare not admit. Love, in its most intense form, can feel less like freedom and more like confinement. It is the paradox of the heart, yearning for connection and belonging, yet terrified of losing autonomy and self. When you open yourself to another, you willingly surrender pieces of your identity, your time, your emotional space. And somewhere deep inside, there's a whisper of fear. What if this surrender becomes permanent? What if love's embrace tightens until it becomes a prison? Imagine the quiet moments when you sit alone with your thoughts, and the sensation creeps in, love as an invisible chain, not forged from metal but from expectations, compromises, and the relentless need to maintain harmony. You realize that to love is not just to give joy, but to absorb responsibility. To watch your dreams bend and shift around the other person's needs. It is not a cage of bars you can see, but walls built from doubts, fears, and the weight of what-ifs. What if you lose yourself in trying to be perfect for them? What if their happiness demands your own unhappiness? These silent questions haunt the mind, turning love from a sanctuary into a prison cell. History is full of stories where love felt like imprisonment. The tale of a queen trapped behind castle walls by her own marriage, the poet chained to unrequited love, or the countless souls who lost themselves in relationships that demanded surrender beyond reason. Even today, people stay in partnerships that suffocate their spirit, because the fear of loneliness outweighs the dread of captivity. This is the cruel irony. The very thing meant to set you free, love, can feel like the heaviest prison, designed not by force, but by the invisible shackles of emotional obligation. And it is in these emotional bonds that the mind's deepest conflicts unfold. The desire to belong clashes with the need to be free. The heart's hunger for intimacy runs headlong into the walls of dependency. When love becomes imprisonment, it is often because boundaries blur and identity fades. You begin to wonder if your feelings are your own or merely echoes of what the other expects. Your desires, once vivid and clear, dim under the weight of compromise. The cage is built slowly, not by cruelty, but by the gradual erosion of self. Consider the psychological toll this takes. Imprisoned by love, you may feel invisible behind the mask you wear to keep peace. You play roles, caretaker, supporter, the perfect partner, while your true self is locked away. Anxiety grows, fed by the uncertainty of being trapped yet unwilling to break free. You might feel guilt for wanting escape, as if yearning for freedom is a betrayal. But this paradox is human. Love is both a source of immense joy and profound pain. It binds as it liberates, holds as it hurts. Examples from real life illuminate this complex dance. Someone stays in a relationship that drains them, not because they lack strength, but because love's cage is adorned with memories, promises, and fear of the unknown beyond. Another feels trapped by the expectations of family and society, where love is measured in sacrifices rather than happiness. And sometimes, even in the healthiest of relationships, there is a moment when love's intensity feels overwhelming, a tightness in the chest that whispers, "Will I ever breathe freely again?" Yet, love as imprisonment is not a condemnation of love itself, but a call to awareness. It urges us to question what kind of love we accept and offer. True love should never feel like a cage. It is a partnership of freedom and connection, where both souls grow and breathe independently while choosing to remain together. The difference lies in respect, trust, and space. When love respects individuality and nurtures autonomy, it transforms from prison to sanctuary. Breaking free from the prison of love begins with self-recognition. You must first see the bars, those invisible boundaries shaped by fear and obligation. Naming your feelings honestly is an act of courage. It means admitting that sometimes love hurts, sometimes it confines, and sometimes it asks more than you can give. But only when you acknowledge this can you start to rebuild your sense of self inside the relationship or find the strength to walk away. There is liberation in realizing that love's chains can be broken without losing the heart. Setting boundaries, communicating needs, and honoring your own identity are the keys. The cage dissolves when both partners commit to freedom as much as to connection. And in that freedom, love flourishes, not as a prison, but as an open sky where two souls fly side by side, unbound yet inseparable. So if you find yourself haunted by the feeling that love imprisons you, remember this: it is not a flaw in you or in love. It is the sign that your spirit needs room to breathe, to be heard, and to be whole. Love should feel like coming home, not like being locked away. And the most profound love you can offer starts with the freedom you give yourself. Empathy is a performance. You walk through life wearing a mask. A mask shaped not by your true feelings, but by what you think others expect you to show. Kindness becomes a role you play, a learned act performed on the stage of social interaction. Empathy, once thought to be a wellspring of genuine connection, feels more like mimicry, a hollow echo of emotions you see in others but never quite own. You wonder, is your kindness real, or just a script you recite to blend in, to survive, to avoid the unbearable silence of emotional emptiness? This fear, that empathy is nothing more than performance, is more common than you might think. Beneath the surface of smiling faces and polite words lies an unsettling question. Am I really feeling this, or am I just imitating what kindness looks like? The brain, ever the clever mimic, often learns social cues without teaching the heart. Over time, you internalize patterns of empathy, but the original spark, the raw, authentic emotional resonance, grows dimmer, replaced by the mechanics of social survival. Imagine a child growing up in a home where emotions were rarely spoken aloud. They watch the people around them, learn which expressions bring comfort, which words calm anger, which gestures signal attention. They practice these moves like a dance, rehearsing the steps of compassion without ever tasting the true feeling. By the time they are adults, kindness is no longer a spontaneous outpouring but a carefully crafted performance. Their empathy is an echo chamber, reflecting what they see rather than what they feel. But why does this happen? Why does genuine empathy sometimes feel like a costume? Part of the answer lies in the deep vulnerability that true empathy demands. To feel another's pain as your own, to immerse yourself in their joy or sorrow, requires a surrender of boundaries. It means opening a door inside you that exposes wounds, uncertainties, and fears. For many, this door feels too heavy to open. The risk of drowning in someone else's suffering, or of losing yourself in the process, pushes the brain to find safer alternatives. So, the brain opts for simulation. It mimics expressions of empathy, a nod, a soothing word, an understanding glance, without the heart's involvement. These rehearsed gestures protect the self from emotional overwhelm. They allow you to appear kind and connected while maintaining a barrier between your inner world and the emotional chaos outside. This coping mechanism, while adaptive in the short term, can lead to a profound sense of isolation. The more you perform empathy without feeling it, the more you question your own humanity. You start to doubt whether your relationships are authentic, whether your kindness is ever enough, or if it's all just a carefully orchestrated illusion. Real empathy, however, cannot be faked for long. Human connection is a mirror. Others sense the difference between genuine warmth and mechanical courtesy. They pick up on subtle cues, the hesitation in your voice, the lack of emotional depth in your eyes, the fleeting nature of your attention. When empathy is a performance, the invisible threads that bind souls weaken and sometimes snap entirely. But here is the paradox. Even if empathy sometimes feels like a performance, that performance can be a path to something real. By practicing kindness, even when it feels hollow, you can awaken dormant feelings. The brain's plasticity allows emotions to be learned as well as mimicked. The more you engage with others in compassionate acts, the more your emotional circuits light up, forging genuine empathy over time. Think of it like learning a new language. At first, your words might feel awkward and rehearsed. You struggle to express yourself, unsure if your sentences carry the right meaning. But with practice, the language becomes fluid, natural, and instinctive. So it is with empathy. Your initial acts might be performances, but they can become authentic expressions as your heart learns to speak. Consider the example of a person who volunteers at a shelter. At first, they may feel detached, going through the motions because they believe it's expected of them. But as they listen to the stories of others, witness their struggles and triumphs, a shift happens. The empathy that was once a role gradually turns into a lived experience. The performer becomes a participant, and kindness becomes a connection. Yet, this transformation requires courage, the courage to face vulnerability, to confront discomfort, and to step beyond the safety of emotional distance. It demands a willingness to be imperfect, to stumble, to feel awkward, and to try again. Empathy, then, is not a static gift but a dynamic process. It is both performance and presence, imitation and authenticity, mask and face. It's a dance between protecting oneself and reaching out to others, between the fear of emptiness and the longing for connection. If you fear your kindness is only mimicry, you are not alone. That fear itself is a sign of deep self-awareness, a longing to break free from the performance and touch something real. It is an invitation to explore your emotions honestly, to practice compassion with patience, and to trust that, over time, the heart can learn to feel again. So, next time you find yourself questioning the authenticity of your empathy, remember this. Even a hollow act can become genuine through intention and effort. Every kind word, every listening ear, every gesture of understanding is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your soul. With time and care, those seeds grow roots and bloom into the vibrant flowers of true empathy. Because empathy is not just what you feel, it's what you choose to do. And in that choice lies the power to transform performance into presence, illusion into reality, and isolation into connection. No one truly knows you. You carry inside you a secret burden, the haunting certainty that no one has ever truly seen you. Beneath the layers of carefully crafted faces, practiced smiles, and rehearsed words, the real you remains hidden, a ghost within your own life. This is not just a fleeting feeling but a deep, aching truth that many share, the sense that no single person has ever truly known who you are. You wear masks to fit in, to protect, to survive, but these masks also build walls, separating the core of your being from the world around you. And in that separation lies a profound loneliness. From childhood, we learn that to be accepted, we must perform. We adjust our behavior to meet expectations, molding ourselves into roles others want us to play. We show the brave face when scared, the cheerful smile when broken, the confident laugh when uncertain. Over time, these performances become habitual, and the line between the mask and the self blurs. Who are you beneath these layers? It's a question that echoes in silence, unanswered. You try to reveal pieces of yourself, but the fear of rejection, misunderstanding, or abandonment often pushes you back into hiding. This feeling is a paradox. On one hand, you crave connection, the desire to be truly known and understood by another soul. On the other, you fear the vulnerability that true exposure demands. The gap between who you are inside and what you show to the world grows wider with every passing day. This creates a painful cycle, because if no one sees the real you, how can you feel seen or loved? And if you never reveal the real you, how can others ever break through the facade? This cycle isolates you in a profound way, making even the closest relationships feel like a stage play where everyone acts, but no one connects. Psychologically, this experience is rooted in our need for authenticity and belonging. Human beings are wired to seek connection based on genuine understanding. Yet, the protective mechanisms built to shield us from pain often force us into roles and scripts that obscure our true nature. Trauma, fear of judgment, and past betrayals teach us that revealing our true self is dangerous. So we build walls, and the real self becomes a secret kept even from those closest to us. This is why, no matter how many friends or lovers we have, the feeling persists: no one truly knows us. Consider the story of a person who spends years in a relationship, sharing life's highs and lows, yet still feels unseen. They may laugh together, share meals, build plans, but when they look inward, they find a cavern of unspoken truths. They hold back fears, doubts, dreams, and scars that remain hidden. This unshared inner world becomes a shadow companion, always present but never invited into the light. The person is loved, perhaps deeply, but loved for a version of themselves that is incomplete. This dynamic can also be seen in everyday social interactions. At work, among acquaintances, even with family, the parts of yourself that feel most vulnerable or complex remain unspoken. You craft stories, filter emotions, and wear a persona that fits social expectations. This curation of self is exhausting, yet it feels necessary. The cost is a deep isolation, because the true self remains invisible, locked behind layers no one can penetrate. Philosophers and writers have long explored this human condition. Soren Kierkegaard described the sickness unto death, a despair born from the disconnect between the self and its expression in the world. Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of the look, the way others' perceptions trap us in roles that feel imposed, never fully authentic. The gap between the I who experiences and the I that is seen becomes a source of existential loneliness. Neuroscience adds another layer of understanding. The brain's social circuits are designed to detect authenticity and build trust, but when signals are masked or inconsistent, relationships can feel hollow. The stress of hiding one's true self triggers anxiety and activates survival mechanisms, keeping the individual guarded and distant. This biological response perpetuates the cycle of invisibility and alienation. Yet, the ache of being unseen also carries a silent yearning, an invitation to seek real connection. The desire to be known, in all your messy, complicated humanity, is a fundamental part of being alive. It pushes many to seek out others who can hold space for their true self without judgment. It fuels art, literature, therapy, and spirituality, efforts to bridge the gap between inner truth and outer expression. Real examples abound. People who find healing through therapy often speak of the relief in finally being witnessed, not just their surface stories, but the raw emotions beneath. Friends who share secrets and vulnerabilities deepen bonds beyond casual acquaintance. Moments of genuine eye contact, of being heard without interruption, create rare but profound experiences of recognition. Still, this journey is not easy. The risk of exposure can feel terrifying. Fear of rejection or loss can keep the self hidden, reinforcing the isolation. But every step toward authenticity, every truth spoken, every mask removed, breaks down the walls bit by bit. Even when others fail to fully understand, the act of revealing yourself holds transformative power. It affirms your existence beyond the practiced faces. The certainty that no one truly knows you may never fully disappear. It is part of the human condition to feel misunderstood, to wrestle with the shadows of identity. But it need not be a prison. This awareness can deepen compassion for yourself and others, recognizing that everyone carries hidden depths and unseen struggles. In the quiet moments, when the masks fall away, you might glimpse your own true self, a being worthy of love and understanding, even if not fully known by others. This inner recognition becomes a source of strength, a refuge from the loneliness of invisibility. So, while no one may ever truly know all of you, there is profound freedom in embracing that mystery. You are more than the faces you wear. You are an evolving, complex soul navigating a world that often demands simplicity. The journey toward being seen starts with seeing yourself, honestly, compassionately, and fully. And in that self-knowledge lies the possibility of connection that transcends masks, a quiet knowing that even if the world only glimpses parts of you, the whole you exists, radiant and real, beneath the surface. Hurting just to feel, sometimes, the world feels numb, blank and empty, like a vast expanse of gray silence where nothing stirs. In those moments, pain becomes a strange companion, a fierce reminder that you are still here, still breathing, still existing. You admit to yourself that hurting is sometimes the only proof you're still alive. It's a paradox. Pain, something we usually avoid, becomes a marker of life itself, a pulse beneath the stillness, an undeniable confirmation of presence. This sensation is not uncommon, though it can feel isolating. When emotional numbness takes hold, it's as if your inner world has shuttered its windows, leaving you in darkness. Joy, excitement, even sadness, all muted into a dull gray monotony. But pain cuts through that silence like a sharp edge. It demands attention. It feels real in a way that numbness cannot. When nothing else can penetrate your emotional shell, pain becomes the last channel through which you can feel connected to yourself. Why does this happen? Psychologists call this phenomenon emotional numbing or dissociation, a protective mechanism triggered by overwhelming stress, trauma, or depression. The mind, seeking to shield itself from unbearable feelings, retreats into a state of detachment. It dulls the senses, blunts the emotions, and creates a sense of distance from reality. While this protects in the short term, in the long run, it leaves a hollow emptiness where life's richness once lived. In this void, the presence of pain becomes oddly necessary. It is the crack in the armor, the flicker of light in the dark. Even suffering, in all its harshness, reassures you that you are not dead inside. This painful aliveness can feel like a cruel gift, a double-edged sword that both wounds and wakes. It reminds you that beneath the numbness, there is still a beating heart. We see this reflected in countless stories and experiences. Take those who have survived trauma or loss and speak of feeling nothing for long stretches, only to find themselves suddenly overwhelmed by pain. This pain, though excruciating, is a sign of healing, of the mind breaking free from its protective cage. It signals that the soul, though battered, is still striving to reconnect with the world. But pain as proof of life is not limited to trauma survivors. Even in everyday moments of quiet despair, when loneliness presses in, or when life's monotony drains your spirit, pain can surface to remind you that you exist beyond the void. This is why some people find themselves drawn to experiences that hurt, emotional or physical, as a way to escape numbness. The sting of pain replaces the emptiness with something tangible, something that can be grasped. Examples abound. Consider those who engage in self-harm, not out of a desire to destroy themselves, but as a desperate attempt to feel something, anything, when all else fades. Or the person who cries uncontrollably after years of bottled-up numbness, finally breaking through the surface. These moments of pain break the silence and reconnect fractured parts of the self. Philosophers and artists have long explored this theme. Friedrich Nietzsche famously wrote, "To live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." Pain, in this sense, is not merely an affliction but a gateway to deeper awareness. It confronts us with our fragility and forces us to reckon with the raw edges of existence. It reminds us that life is not just comfort and joy but also struggle and sorrow, and both are essential to truly living. Neuroscience sheds light on the complexity of pain and numbness. The brain's limbic system, responsible for emotion, can become dysregulated in response to trauma or chronic stress. This dysregulation can cause emotional blunting, while pain activates neural pathways that break through this blunting. Endorphins and other neurochemicals involved in pain response create a paradoxical mixture of suffering and relief, tying pain to the sensation of aliveness. Yet, while pain may be proof of life, it is not a sustainable or healthy way to feel alive. It carries a heavy cost. Chronic pain, emotional or physical, erodes well-being, strains relationships, and limits the capacity to experience joy or peace. The goal, then, is not to seek pain but to find a way back to feeling fully, to reconnect with life's full spectrum of emotion without the need for suffering as a proof. Healing begins with awareness. Acknowledging numbness without judgment opens the door to gradual reawakening. Therapeutic practices like mindfulness, somatic experiencing, and expressive arts help individuals reconnect with their bodies and emotions in safe ways. Building supportive relationships where vulnerability is met with understanding rather than rejection is crucial. Consider the metaphor of winter turning to spring. Emotional numbness is like a long, cold season where growth seems impossible. Pain is the thaw, the breaking of ice that allows new life to emerge. Though painful, the thaw is necessary to return to warmth, color, and vitality. It is a passage, not a permanent state. You may not control when numbness descends or when pain rises. But you can cultivate the courage to sit with these feelings, to honor the pain without letting it define you. You can seek connection, professional help, and practices that nurture your capacity to feel without being overwhelmed. Over time, the sting of pain can give way to a richer, fuller experience of life, one where you no longer need hurt as proof, but simply embrace the vastness of your own emotional landscape. The journey from numbness through pain to vibrant feeling is deeply personal and often nonlinear. There may be setbacks and moments of despair, but each step forward is a reclamation of life itself. In this process, you learn that feeling alive does not mean constant intensity, but rather the presence of openness, curiosity, and acceptance, even in moments of silence. Ultimately, hurting just to feel is a testimony to the human spirit's resilience. It reveals a profound desire to connect with reality, to affirm existence in the face of emptiness. It is a call to remember that beneath the numbness, beneath the pain, there is a self waiting to be known, embraced, and loved, first and foremost by yourself. You'd trade it all for quiet. You sometimes wish you could abandon everything, love, ambition, memory, just to have peace without the noise of being human. The relentless chatter of thoughts, the ceaseless tide of feelings, the swirling storm of desires and fears, it all weighs heavy, drowning out the quiet you crave. You imagine a place beyond the tumult, where silence reigns and your restless mind finally finds rest. This wish is not born of weakness or surrender, but of profound exhaustion. To love is to open yourself to pain, to strive is to invite failure, to remember is to carry ghosts. Each human experience brings joy, yes, but also a relentless noise that can overwhelm even the strongest spirit. The desire to trade it all for quiet is a yearning for relief, a pause from the endless being, the constant becoming. Consider the moments when your mind races past midnight, caught in loops of worry or regret, the noise of unspoken words and unmet hopes echoing loud and clear. Or the times when ambition burns so fiercely it blinds you to simple joys, making rest feel like defeat. The memories that flood unexpectedly, dragging you back to pain or loss, remind you that being human is a complex burden. Yet this quiet you seek is not emptiness, it is a sacred space where the soul can breathe and heal. It is the stillness between heartbeats, the calm beneath the storm, the space where you reconnect with the essence beyond your stories and struggles. It beckons you, promising a reprieve from the noise without demanding you give up your humanity. But can peace exist without the very things that make you human? Love, ambition, and memory shape who you are. They color your world with meaning and depth. To abandon them might silence the noise, but it also dims the vibrant tapestry of your life. The challenge is to find quiet not by escape, but through acceptance, embracing the fullness of being human with all its noise and beauty. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, and deep reflection offer paths to this quiet. They teach you to observe the noise without being consumed, to rest in awareness beyond thought and emotion. Through them, peace becomes not the absence of noise, but a presence beneath it, a grounding force that steadies your spirit amidst the chaos. You are not alone in this longing. Across cultures and ages, seekers have yearned for the same peace, walking paths that honor both the noise of life and the silence within. Their journeys show that quiet is not a place to flee to, but a space to come home to, a home inside yourself. So when the wish to abandon everything arises, listen gently. It speaks to your need for rest and restoration. But remember, true peace arises not from loss, but from balance, where love, ambition, and memory can coexist with quiet, where the noise becomes music and the silence a refuge. Because to be human is to dance between sound and silence, to find stillness not by shutting out life, but by opening fully to its rhythm. In this dance, you discover the quiet you seek, not as an escape, but as your true self, whole and free. You pretend to need them. You suspect your dependence is a mask you wear to keep others close, but deep down you don't need anyone at all. This hidden truth lies buried beneath layers of social conditioning, emotional survival tactics, and the primal instinct to belong. You act vulnerable, leaning on others like a fragile bridge, but inside you harbor a silent fortress built of self-reliance and solitude. The dependence you show is less about actual need and more about control, a way to bind others to you, to ensure they don't slip away into the vastness where you feel invincible yet profoundly alone. This pretense is a delicate performance, crafted carefully over years of experience, pain, and observation. You learn early that vulnerability invites rejection, that true exposure is dangerous. So you build a character, someone who needs, who fears loss, who clings, while behind the scenes, you watch and calculate. This mask of dependence is not weakness but armor. It is a strategic illusion designed to maintain relationships, to keep people within reach without surrendering your essence. In truth, the idea of needing anyone terrifies you because it threatens the self-sufficiency you have worked so hard to preserve. Psychologists call this a paradox of attachment, the desire to connect shadowed by the fear of dependency. You want to be wanted, but you dread the powerlessness that comes with need. When you show weakness, you lose control. When you admit need, you risk becoming vulnerable to hurt or abandonment. So instead, you mimic dependence, playing the part of someone who requires love and support, while your core remains untouchable, a secret island no one can invade. Many have lived this duality, showing a craving for connection while secretly believing they stand alone. You might recall moments when you carefully orchestrated emotional displays, moments when your tears felt scripted, or your pleas calculated. These acts were not lies but survival tools. They tethered others to you, created bonds that seemed real, even if your heart remained detached. And in this dance of need and independence, you become both prisoner and jailer, desperate to hold on while guarding yourself fiercely. Examples abound in everyday life. A friend who always calls when lonely but disappears when others reach out. A partner who clings tightly but resists intimacy. A child who acts fragile to gain attention, yet retreats into silence when comfort arrives. These patterns reveal the struggle between the craving for human contact and the imperative to protect the self. The mask is a fortress, but also a cage, isolating you from genuine connection while preserving your emotional autonomy. This duality leaves you suspended in a lonely middle ground. You are neither truly dependent nor fully independent, caught between the longing to be seen and the instinct to remain invisible. The mask wears you down, exhausting the energy needed to maintain the illusion. You may find yourself wondering, who am I beneath this mask? What parts of me crave closeness, and which parts reject it? The answers are elusive, tangled in the complexity of your emotional landscape. But the most profound realization comes when you understand that this pretense, this mask of need, is both your prison and your protector. It shields you from pain but also blocks the path to authentic love. True connection demands vulnerability without artifice, trust without calculation. It requires dismantling the walls you have built and risking exposure to the unpredictable and often terrifying terrain of human intimacy. Healing begins when you allow yourself to feel the contradiction, to embrace your need without shame, and your independence without guilt. It is a journey of reclaiming the parts of yourself you have hidden behind the mask. When you dare to be genuinely vulnerable, you invite others to meet you fully, not the version of you crafted to keep them close, but the real you longing to be known. In those moments, the mask loses its power. The pretense fades, replaced by an honesty that is both fragile and fierce. You discover that needing someone is not a sign of weakness but a fundamental part of being human. And in acknowledging this truth, you free yourself from the exhausting act of pretending. You learn that you can need and be needed, depend and be independent, love and be loved, without losing the essence of who you are. Life is just a performance. You look around and begin to wonder, what if life itself is just a performance? Every smile, every tear, every celebration carefully choreographed to keep you from facing the void beneath. You climb milestone after milestone, chase dreams spun from fragile hopes, and applaud achievements that glitter like fragile illusions. But beneath this spectacle, a whisper lingers. Is it all just an elaborate show? A grand distraction from the absurdity that underlies existence? From the moment you wake, you step onto a stage without a script. You wear roles dictated by society: student, worker, lover, friend. You learn to act the parts expected of you, mastering the lines of success and happiness, masking the dread that bubbles beneath. The applause of approval becomes your currency, the nods and smiles your lifeline. But what if these roles are nothing but a veil, hiding a deeper truth, that life, with all its noise and motion, is a vast and meaningless performance? Philosophers have long wrestled with this question. Camus spoke of the absurd, the clash between our desire for meaning and the silent indifference of the universe. We crave purpose, but the cosmos offers none. Instead, it watches silently, an indifferent audience to our acts. This tension, the desire for meaning amidst meaninglessness, pushes us into performance. We distract ourselves with activity, stories, identities, to keep the abyss at bay. You might see this in everyday life. The endless social media posts, the carefully curated images, the achievements broadcast like trophies, not always to share joy, but to validate existence. Each status update, each highlight reel, becomes part of the script we perform to convince ourselves and others that our lives are significant, that we are not mere shadows in an empty theater. But what happens when the curtain falls? When the applause fades and the masks slip? Many experience a hollow silence, a disquiet that no milestone can soothe. The joyous moments, the celebrations, they can feel fleeting, like a scene rehearsed but never truly lived. The weight of absurdity presses in, threatening to unravel the carefully woven illusion. Yet, within this bleakness, there is a strange freedom. If life is a performance, then you hold the power of the playwright, the director, and the actor. The absurdity does not bind you, it frees you. Without inherent meaning imposed from above, you can create your own. You can choose your roles, improvise your lines, and craft moments that resonate with your truth. Existentialists argue that embracing the absurd allows you to live more fully. Instead of despairing over meaninglessness, you revel in the act of creating meaning. Life's performance becomes not a prison, but a stage for authentic expression. Every laugh, every tear, every milestone gains weight not because it's universal, but because you imbue it with significance. Consider the artist who paints not for praise, but because the act of creation itself is life's true meaning. Or the parent who sacrifices endlessly, finding purpose in love despite the cosmic silence. Their lives are performances, yes, but ones filled with intentionality, passion, and depth. They choose to dance on the absurd stage with fierce presence. Still, the fear remains, what if it's all just a show? What if beneath the drama lies nothing but emptiness? This fear is a shadow companion, whispering doubt even in moments of joy. It asks you to question the authenticity of your happiness, the solidity of your achievements, the reality of your connections. In facing this fear, you are invited to look deeper, to accept that life's fragility and uncertainty are part of its beauty, that the performance, no matter how elaborate or fleeting, holds meaning because you are here, now, experiencing it, that the absurdity itself challenges you to create moments that matter, however transient. Life, then, is a paradox, a performance without a script, a search for meaning in a meaningless universe, a dance on the edge of emptiness. You are both actor and audience, creator and creation, lost and found. So when you ask yourself if every milestone, every joy is just a show, remember this: the performance is yours to shape. You can choose to hide behind masks, or you can dare to live openly, embracing the absurd with courage and grace. In that choice lies the power to turn the hollow spectacle into a profound journey, a performance that, despite its fleeting nature, echoes with the voice of your own existence. You resent the innocent. You carry a complicated and painful emotion deep inside, a quiet resentment for the innocent, those untouched by darkness and hardship. When you see others who seem to glide through life effortlessly, unscarred by pain or struggle, a flash of contempt rises within you. Their ease feels like an unspoken insult to your own journey, as if their lightness dismisses the weight you have borne. This feeling is not born of cruelty but of raw, aching truth. It is the bitter ache of survival, the paradox of witnessing others' freedom while you remain shackled by your scars. Life has a way of carving deep valleys in some and leaving others untouched, seemingly spared from the storms that batter your soul. Their laughter, their peace, their unburdened days, these can sting, as if the world is unfairly divided between the fortunate and the broken. You might wonder why they can walk so freely while you stumble through shadows. This resentment is a natural, human response to pain and injustice, a defense against the isolation that comes from feeling different, vulnerable, or damaged. At the heart of this resentment lies the truth that you long for what they have, the ability to live without the heavy cloak of past wounds or ongoing struggle. It is a desire for ease, for peace, for the simple grace of being untouched by the darkness that has shaped you. Yet, because that ease is so foreign and inaccessible, it breeds bitterness. You might catch yourself envying their smiles or resenting their lightness, even as you recognize the unfairness of this judgment. This feeling is complex and layered. It can coexist with empathy, compassion, and even love for others, but it also carries the sharp sting of grief for the parts of yourself lost or broken, and for a world that feels indifferent to your pain. It is a reflection of the human tendency to compare our inner battles to the apparent ease of others, often forgetting that every soul carries hidden struggles, invisible to the eye. In psychological terms, this resentment can be a form of survivor's guilt or a shadow of unresolved trauma. It emerges when you face your own suffering and look outward to those who seem unscarred. The mind tries to make sense of the disparity, sometimes reacting with judgment or bitterness. It can also be a cry for recognition, a need for your pain to be acknowledged rather than overlooked or minimized. Yet, this resentment holds a paradoxical power. It can either deepen your isolation, fueling anger and division, or it can become a catalyst for self-awareness and healing. When you confront this feeling honestly, without shame or denial, you begin to understand the full scope of your experience. You see that your struggle is valid, but so too is the innocence of others, not as an insult, but as a different path through life. Real life offers countless examples of this tension. People who have endured trauma or hardship may find it hard to relate to those who have not faced such challenges. They may recoil from the seeming lightness of others, mistaking ease for privilege or ignorance. Yet, often beneath that resentment lies a yearning for relief, for understanding, for the possibility of reclaiming some measure of peace. Even the innocent themselves carry hidden vulnerabilities, and ease is rarely absolute. But the perception of others' lightness can be an unyielding mirror reflecting what you have lost or never had. It reminds you sharply of the distance between your world and theirs, and in that reflection, the resentment flickers. Ultimately, moving beyond this resentment involves recognizing the shared humanity beneath all differences. It means embracing your pain and your journey without comparison, and allowing others to walk their paths without judgment. It is a practice of compassion, for yourself, for the innocent, and for the complex, unpredictable nature of life. The resentment for the innocent is a shadow cast by your own suffering, but it need not define you. By acknowledging it and exploring its roots, you can transform it from a source of bitterness into a bridge toward deeper understanding and connection. This journey is not easy, but it holds the promise of peace, a peace that comes not from comparing burdens, but from honoring your unique story and finding empathy for the stories of others. In the end, you are not alone in feeling this way. Many carry this quiet resentment, a testament to the profound impact of hardship on the human heart. And within that shared experience lies the potential to heal, to grow, and to embrace both your darkness and the light of those around you with grace. Nothing is worth the cost. You question if any connection or success could ever be worth the endless exhaustion it demands. This doubt settles like a heavy fog around your mind, blurring the lines between hope and despair. In a world that glorifies achievement and constant striving, you begin to wonder, what is the true cost of belonging, of climbing higher, of chasing dreams? Is the price paid in weariness, in shattered rest, in frayed nerves ever justified by the fleeting moments of triumph or the fragile bonds we form? From the outside, success gleams like a trophy, shiny, desirable, a symbol of worth. Connections appear as vibrant lifelines, promising comfort and joy. But behind the scenes, there lurks a relentless drain, the pressure to perform, to maintain appearances, to meet endless expectations. You feel stretched thin, as though your energy is siphoned away drop by drop, leaving behind a husk of exhaustion. The irony is sharp. What was supposed to uplift and enrich often leaves you depleted and hollow. In countless stories, this tension plays out. The high-powered executive who wins promotion after promotion yet arrives home to silence and fatigue. The artist who pours their soul into creation but finds themselves drained and isolated. The friend who sacrifices their own peace to keep connections alive, only to feel worn and invisible. These are not mere anecdotes but reflections of a deeper human struggle, balancing ambition and rest, connection and solitude, achievement and well-being. Psychological research highlights this conflict. Chronic stress from overwork or social demands triggers burnout, a state marked by physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. Burnout erodes joy and motivation, replacing them with cynicism and detachment. When the cost of success or connection is relentless exhaustion, the brain signals danger, urging withdrawal and self-preservation. Yet the societal narrative often discourages pause, equating rest with failure. This paradox can make you question the very meaning of your pursuits. If the price is endless fatigue, if the effort drains your soul, what remains of the reward? It's a question that resonates deeply with those caught in the cycle of striving, where the finish line keeps moving, and rest is always later. The cost becomes not just physical but existential, a questioning of purpose and value. But this questioning also offers a doorway to deeper insight. It challenges the cultural myth that worth is measured solely by output and recognition. It invites you to redefine success and connection on your own terms, terms that honor balance, boundaries, and self-care. It asks you to listen to your body's whispers and your heart's quiet pleadings for ease. Examples abound of those who have reimagined this balance. Some have stepped away from high-pressure careers to pursue meaningful, sustainable work. Others have learned to say no, to protect their energy and prioritize genuine relationships over superficial ones. These choices reflect a radical reclaiming of one's own rhythm and limits, a refusal to sacrifice health for hollow gains. Philosophers and thinkers have long pondered the cost of desire and achievement. The ancient Stoics taught that tranquility is found not in endless pursuit, but in acceptance and moderation. Modern voices echo this wisdom, reminding us that true fulfillment arises not from burning out, but from steady, mindful engagement with life's gifts. Neuroscience reveals that rest and recovery are not luxuries but necessities for cognitive and emotional health. Sleep, downtime, and meaningful breaks replenish neural circuits, foster creativity, and strengthen resilience. Ignoring these needs distorts perception, reduces productivity, and undermines happiness. The brain itself pleads for balance. Your doubt, that nothing is worth the cost, signals an important boundary. It is a call to examine what you truly value and how you can pursue it without losing yourself. It encourages you to question assumptions and experiment with new ways of living that honor both ambition and peace. This might mean setting clearer boundaries around work and social obligations, cultivating mindfulness practices that restore calm, or seeking relationships that energize rather than drain. It might involve redefining success as well-being rather than achievement alone, or embracing the beauty of enough rather than constant accumulation. In this exploration, You discover that the cost of connection and success is not fixed but negotiable. You gain the power to decide what you will invest your energy in and what you will let go. This choice restores agency and nurtures self-respect. Ultimately, the question, "Is it worth it?" becomes not a source of despair but a compass guiding you toward a life aligned with your deepest needs and values. It leads you to a place where success and connection are not burdens but blessings, where exhaustion is replaced by vitality, and where every step forward feels sustainable and true. So, while you may question the cost now, remember that this questioning is itself a vital part of your journey, a signal that you are awakening to your own worth beyond mere output, ready to claim a life that honors both your dreams and your well-being. You'd rather watch it burn. You imagine setting fire to everything you built, not out of anger or despair, but because the weight of pretending it all matters has become unbearable. Every brick laid with effort, every dream nurtured with hope, every carefully painted facade feels hollow beneath your touch. The life you constructed feels like a play you no longer want to perform, a story whose meaning you can no longer believe. In this quiet rebellion, you find a strange comfort in the idea of collapse, because starting from ashes feels more honest than continuing the pretense. This thought is both terrifying and strangely liberating. To watch everything burn is to imagine a cleansing, a release from the chains of expectation and the burden of maintaining appearances. The flames promise a kind of truth, the raw, unfiltered reality beneath layers of construction, correction, and compromise. They offer the possibility of renewal, of becoming free from the narratives that no longer serve you. Consider the builder who, after years of labor, steps back to see the walls crumble in fire, not as destruction, but as transformation. The old structures fall away, revealing the fertile ground beneath, waiting for seeds of new purpose and identity. This is not a fantasy of nihilism but a yearning for authenticity, a desire to be unmasked, vulnerable, and real. This impulse resonates deeply within the human psyche. Many have stood at the precipice, feeling the weight of their lives' edifices and dreaming of collapse. Artists burning their works to spark fresh creativity. Leaders dissolving old systems to birth new visions. Everyday people walking away from careers, relationships, and patterns that suffocate their spirit. The fire becomes a symbol of courage, the willingness to face the void rather than the illusion. Yet, beneath this longing lies profound fear. Fire consumes indiscriminately. In burning down what is false, you risk losing what is true, what is precious, what anchors you. The ashes might reveal freedom, but they might also reveal emptiness. To watch it all burn is to confront chaos, uncertainty, and the terrifying unknown. This tension is the paradox of growth and change. The very structures that confine you also protect you. The narratives you question also define you. The pretense you resent also shields you from vulnerability. The fire you dream of is both destroyer and creator, annihilator and midwife. In this delicate balance, you find the challenge of transformation. You must hold the desire for honesty and renewal alongside the wisdom of preservation and care. You must learn to let go without losing yourself, to dismantle without becoming lost in the rubble. History offers countless examples of this dance. The phoenix rises only after the flames. Societies rebuild stronger after collapse. Personal revolutions begin with breaking and remaking. In each story, fire is both end and beginning, destruction paired with possibility. To embrace this truth requires courage. It means facing the discomfort of uncertainty, the pain of loss, and the vulnerability of starting anew. It means trusting that beneath the ashes, life waits patiently, ready to bloom. So when you find yourself imagining the fire, listen. It is the voice of your deepest truth yearning to be heard. It calls you to shed falsehoods and to step into authenticity. It invites you to risk everything for a chance at realness. Because sometimes, the only way to be truly alive is to watch it all burn, and then to rise, ashes to sky, reborn in your own fierce light. You miss who you never were. You ache for the version of yourself you invented, a fantasy that's always just out of reach. It's a ghost you chase in the shadows of your mind, a reflection in a mirror that never quite reveals your true face. This imagined self is perfect, whole, fearless, a being untouched by failure, regret, or doubt. But the deeper truth is that this self never existed. It is a construct, a castle built from longing and pain, a story you tell yourself to fill the emptiness of feeling inadequate. And yet, the ache for this phantom identity shapes your life more than reality ever could. In quiet moments, you feel the weight of this missing self pressing on your chest. You wonder why you can't seem to live up to the image etched in your mind, why the person you are now feels so painfully inadequate compared to who you think you should be. This pain is not just about unmet goals or broken dreams. It is a profound sorrow for a self that never walked the earth, a life path never taken, a potential never realized, a soul never freed. You mourn a version of you that might have been perfect, kind, or strong, yet always remains a shimmering illusion just beyond your grasp. This phenomenon is not rare. Many carry within them the ghost of an ideal self, shaped by childhood hopes, societal expectations, or personal fantasies. The mind fabricates a version of who we think we should be, a flawless hero, a radiant success, or the embodiment of all virtues. But reality intervenes with its messiness, its imperfections, and its failures. The clash between who you are and who you wish you were creates a void where self-acceptance should grow. Instead, you wrestle with a shadow that mocks your every step, whispering that you're not enough. Psychologists call this experience the lost possible self, a painful longing for what might have been if only circumstances were different or choices more fortunate. This loss is double-edged. It fuels ambition and growth, but it also breeds dissatisfaction and despair. You become trapped in an endless pursuit, chasing a mirage while your true self waits quietly, yearning to be embraced. The ache deepens because you do not just miss a version of yourself, you miss the hope, the promise, the innocence that self once represented. Life stories and literature abound with echoes of this ache. The artist who mourns the masterpiece never created, the lover who grieves the relationship never had, the dreamer who laments the unchosen path. This universal longing touches something fundamental in human nature, the desire for meaning, coherence, and transcendence beyond the flawed present. But unlike those stories, the self you miss is a ghost of your own making, a specter haunting your identity from within. This longing can manifest in subtle ways: restlessness, chronic dissatisfaction, or a vague sense of failure. It may push you to reinvent yourself endlessly, to discard your achievements, or to devalue your true qualities. You compare yourself relentlessly to this phantom ideal, and the gap widens with every passing day. This internal exile from your own being leaves you feeling fragmented and incomplete, as if you live in exile from the very soul you seek. Yet, within this ache lies a hidden invitation, a call to reconcile with yourself, to recognize that the missing self is not lost but waiting to be found. The fantasy you chase is a map, pointing toward qualities and values you desire: courage, kindness, creativity, freedom. These are not unreachable ideals but seeds planted within your present self, waiting to bloom in the soil of acceptance and effort. The journey is not to become who you never were, but to become who you truly are beneath the mask of longing. Healing this ache means turning from chasing illusions toward embracing reality. It requires compassionate acceptance of your flaws, your history, and your unique path. It means mourning the lost possible self while making peace with the imperfect present. In doing so, you dissolve the painful gap between fantasy and reality, replacing it with a bridge of understanding and hope. The self you missed was never an enemy but a teacher, guiding you toward deeper self-awareness and wholeness. So when the ache rises, don't push it away. Let it speak. Listen to the sorrow of the version you never were. It carries the essence of your deepest desires. And in that listening, find the courage to embrace your true self, imperfect, evolving, and wholly alive. You are not defined by what you never were, but by the life you choose to live now, with all its messy, beautiful complexity. Love is a distraction. You feel the pull of love like a beacon in a dark room, a brilliant light that promises warmth and meaning. Yet, beneath that glow, a quiet fear takes root. What if this affection is nothing but a distraction? A dazzling curtain drawn across the emptiness that lurks behind, a smoke screen that keeps you from facing the hollow silence inside. You wonder if love is less a sanctuary and more a carefully constructed illusion, designed to shield you from the unbearable truth of your own void. This fear is not born from cynicism alone, but from a profound confrontation with vulnerability. Love demands openness, a surrender of the defenses you have built so painstakingly. To love is to risk being seen, truly seen, in your raw and unguarded state. But what if, in that moment, you find only emptiness reflected back? What if the affection you seek is only a temporary escape from the unbearable isolation of your own self? You watch relationships unfold like intricate performances, smiles exchanged, tender words spoken, touch that promises connection. Yet, beneath these gestures, you sometimes sense a fragility, a faint echo of pretense. You wonder if both you and the ones you love are playing parts, acting out roles to maintain the illusion of fullness, while the vast emptiness remains untouched behind the curtain. Philosophers and poets alike have grappled with this paradox. Love, they say, is both the greatest balm and the deepest wound. It can heal the fractures of loneliness or expose the raw fissures beneath. When love feels like distraction, it is often because it is a refuge from confronting the parts of ourselves we fear most, our solitude, our fears, our own sense of unworthiness. But love, even as a distraction, holds a peculiar power. It provides moments of light, fleeting though they may be, that remind you of what it means to be alive. The laughter shared in intimacy, the brush of a hand on skin, the warmth of a voice in the dark. These moments, though ephemeral, offer a glimpse beyond the void, a fragile thread tying you to the world and to others. Still, the question remains, is this thread strong enough to hold? Or is it merely a shimmering veil, masking the abyss? In facing this question, you confront the essence of human existence, the constant tension between yearning and emptiness, presence and absence. Love may indeed be a distraction, but it is also a choice. A choice to engage with life's pain and beauty simultaneously, to embrace connection despite the risks, to seek meaning in the face of uncertainty. Consider those who have loved deeply, yet carry scars from the void. They continue to reach out, not because they deny the emptiness, but because they refuse to be defined by it. They understand that love's brightness does not erase the darkness but coexists with it, creating a spectrum of experience that is uniquely human. In your own heart, this tension plays out daily. You may fear that affection conceals emptiness, yet you also crave the light it brings. The struggle itself is a testament to your resilience, your desire to find wholeness in a fragmented world. So, when love feels like a distraction, allow yourself to sit with that discomfort. Recognize the curtain for what it is, not just a mask hiding emptiness, but also a gateway to deeper understanding. Through love's distraction, you may glimpse the contours of your own soul, the spaces yearning to be filled, and the courage to face what lies beyond. Love is a paradox, a distraction and a revelation, a shelter and a challenge, a fleeting illusion and a lasting truth. In navigating its complexity, you step into the full spectrum of your humanity, embracing both light and shadow, connection and solitude. And perhaps, in that very dance, you find a meaning that transcends the fear, a meaning born not from the absence behind the curtain, but from the brave act of drawing it aside, time and again, to see and be seen. You enjoy others' failure. You find a strange, unsettling comfort in the failures of others. When someone stumbles, falters, or falls, there is a fleeting moment where you feel a quiet relief, almost a secret pleasure. It's not born of cruelty or malice, but from a deep, raw part of your psyche that aches with loneliness and vulnerability. Seeing another's weakness mirrored back at you makes your own struggles feel less isolated, less like a solitary burden you must carry alone. Their failure, in a paradoxical way, becomes a companion to your own, a silent acknowledgement that you are not the only one wrestling with pain and imperfection. Life often feels like a harsh and unforgiving arena, where everyone is expected to stand strong and unbreakable. Yet beneath these facades, many bear scars invisible to the outside world. When others succeed effortlessly, it can deepen the feeling of alienation within you, a reminder of your own struggles and shortcomings. But when they falter, a fleeting sense of solidarity arises. Their weakness says, "You are not alone." In that moment, their failure offers an unspoken connection, a shared human experience of imperfection and vulnerability. Psychologically, this feeling is complex and nuanced. It is related to what social psychologists call Schadenfreude, a German term for taking pleasure in others' misfortune. But unlike simple Schadenfreude, this sensation is often wrapped in empathy and recognition rather than pure delight. It reveals how deeply humans seek connection and validation. Your mind is searching for evidence that your pain and failure are part of a common fabric, not a mark of unique deficiency. Others' falls become mirrors reflecting your own, helping to ease the isolation of personal struggle. This dynamic plays out in many ways. Imagine a person who has faced repeated setbacks, be it in relationships, career, or personal growth. When they see others face similar obstacles, they feel less alone, less like an outlier battling a personal storm. The shared experience of failure becomes a subtle balm, a reassurance that imperfection is universal. It challenges the myth of invulnerability that society often projects and acknowledges the reality of human fragility. However, this feeling can also be a double-edged sword. If relishing others' failure becomes a habit, it risks fostering bitterness, envy, or cynicism. It can create an us versus them mentality, where connection is found only in shared weakness rather than mutual support or growth. The challenge lies in recognizing this feeling honestly without letting it harden into judgment or cruelty. At its core, this experience highlights a deep human need, to belong and to be seen, even in our failures. When others falter, it validates the messy, imperfect nature of existence. It reminds us that no one walks a flawless path. In recognizing this, there is potential for empathy, for reaching out rather than recoiling in judgment. Real-world examples show this tension vividly. In competitive environments, people might secretly rejoice in a rival's stumble, but this reaction is often intertwined with their own insecurities. In friendships, sharing stories of personal failures can create bonds, reducing shame and fostering understanding. It is through vulnerability, not perfection, that true connection often blooms. Neuroscience also sheds light on this phenomenon. The brain's social circuits are wired to detect patterns of similarity and difference. Recognizing others' failures activates circuits linked to empathy and social bonding. At the same time, it can trigger self-comparison, which, if unchecked, may spiral into envy or resentment. Balancing these responses requires self-awareness and compassion. The feeling of enjoying others' failure, then, is a window into the complexity of human emotion, a mixture of pain, relief, connection, and conflict. It is a reminder that beneath the surface, everyone carries hidden struggles, and sometimes the only solace we find is in knowing we are not alone in falling. Transforming this feeling into something constructive means shifting from quiet relief at others' stumbles to genuine compassion for their journey. It means recognizing shared humanity and offering support rather than judgment. In doing so, the loneliness that drives this feeling can give way to authentic connection and healing. So, if you catch yourself relishing others' failure, know that this feeling is part of your longing to be understood and not isolated in your pain. It is a natural, if complicated, human response. But within it lies an opportunity to move beyond relief into empathy, to see other struggles not as a mirror for your own alone, but as a shared path where compassion and solidarity can flourish. You've outgrown everyone. You believe no one in your life will ever understand you again, and the thought is both liberating and shattering. It is a strange crossroads where the old familiar world slips away, leaving behind a sense of solitude that is both a burden and a freedom. To outgrow those around you is to face the paradox of evolution, where growth demands leaving behind what once nurtured you, but the new path feels uncharted and lonely. This experience is deeply human. As we change, through life's trials, revelations, and shifting perspectives, our inner landscapes transform. The people who once mirrored our thoughts, values, and emotions begin to seem distant, as if speaking a different language. The connections that once felt effortless become strained, fragile, or dissolve entirely. This process can feel like an invisible loss, a mourning for the versions of yourself and others that no longer exist. The liberation in this belief lies in the recognition of your own growth. It is an acknowledgement that you have evolved beyond old patterns, limiting beliefs, or shallow understandings. To outgrow others means you are expanding your horizon, stepping into a more authentic, complex version of yourself. It is a claim to individuality and self-realization that no longer fits into past molds. Yet, this freedom comes with a shattering cost. The familiarity, comfort, and shared history that once grounded you feel like fading echoes. You might feel isolated, misunderstood, or adrift. The fear that you will never find someone who truly gets you again can sting with profound loneliness. It challenges the fundamental human need for connection and belonging. Psychologists identify this tension as part of personal development and individuation, the process by which one becomes a distinct self, separate from the collective identities we inherit. This process often involves painful ruptures with family, friends, or communities that no longer align with our evolving truths. The pain of disconnection, paradoxically, often accompanies the joy of self-discovery. In literature and culture, this theme recurs in stories of transformation, the hero's journey that demands leaving the known to embrace the unknown. Characters who evolve find themselves estranged but also empowered, caught between nostalgia and possibility. This duality is the human condition, reflected in the bittersweet nature of growth. Biologically, our brains are wired for social connection, and feelings of isolation trigger stress responses akin to physical pain. This neural reality intensifies the emotional impact of outgrowing others. Yet, the brain is also capable of adapting, forming new connections, and expanding empathy over time. Your belief that no one will understand you again may be a temporary state, a phase in your evolution. It invites you to cultivate self-compassion and patience, knowing that authentic connection often requires new contexts, openness, and vulnerability. Sometimes, it means seeking communities or individuals aligned with your current self rather than clinging to the past. This stage also encourages deep introspection. It asks you to explore what understanding truly means, not just being recognized by others but also recognizing and accepting yourself fully. The liberation you feel is a call to embrace your uniqueness without needing external validation. Over time, many who have felt this isolation discover new relationships that honor their growth and complexity. These connections may be fewer but more profound, built on mutual respect and authenticity rather than mere familiarity. Ultimately, to believe you have outgrown everyone is to stand at the edge of transformation, where loss and freedom intertwine. It is a space of courage, where you shed old skins and prepare to grow anew. This journey is not easy, but it is a testament to your evolving self and the endless possibility of becoming. You want to leave without goodbye. You fantasize about walking away from everyone you love, slipping quietly into the shadows of your own life without a word, without explanation, without any promise of return. This secret desire lives in the quiet spaces between your thoughts, hidden beneath the layers of obligation, love, and guilt that bind you. It is not born from anger or malice but from a deep and aching exhaustion, a yearning for freedom from the tangled webs of connection that feel too heavy to bear. Imagine the weight of it all, the expectations that press down like stones on your chest, the endless performances you give to keep peace, to avoid conflict, to protect others' feelings at the cost of your own. Each smile you force, each conversation you navigate with caution, each role you play in family, friendship, or love becomes a chain tightening around your spirit. The fantasy of walking away is a quiet rebellion, a breath caught in the lungs, a desperate wish for silence. In your mind's eye, you see yourself at the edge of everything you know. The faces of those you care about blur as you step away, untethered and unbound. No explanations, no apologies, just the freedom to vanish into the night, to erase the demands and disappointments, the memories and misunderstandings. The ache of needing to justify yourself dissolves in the promise of escape. This is not weakness, it is an expression of profound vulnerability. To love deeply is to be tied to others in ways that nourish and sometimes suffocate. The ties that hold you together can also feel like ropes pulling you under, making the fantasy of leaving without goodbye seem like a lifeline. You imagine that in absence, you might find peace, a place where you no longer have to measure your worth by how much you give or how well you endure. But beneath this longing lies a paradox. Connection is both your greatest gift and your deepest pain. The bonds you contemplate breaking are woven from shared history, laughter, tears, and moments too precious to forget. Leaving without goodbye would fracture those threads, leaving raw edges that cut both ways. The silence you imagine is filled with the echoes of what you would lose, the love, the shared memories, the possibility of healing. There are moments in life when this fantasy grows louder, during heartbreak, betrayal, overwhelming stress, or loneliness. The urge to flee swells when pain feels unbearable and the weight of expectation becomes too much. Yet, often it is in these darkest hours that the ties that bind reveal their resilience. Sometimes, it is in the struggle to stay, to communicate, and to be seen that real strength emerges. Examples abound in the stories of those who have wrestled with this urge. The caregiver overwhelmed by endless demands, longing to disappear yet bound by love. The artist who retreats from the world, not out of disdain but out of the need to protect a fragile soul. The person who leaves a relationship abruptly, driven by fear and exhaustion, only to find later that the silence speaks louder than words. To confront this desire is to face your own limits with compassion. It means recognizing the pain that fuels the wish to vanish and allowing yourself space to rest and heal. It calls for honest conversations, with yourself and those you love, about boundaries, needs, and fears. It invites you to find ways to live authentically without disappearing. Walking away without goodbye is a dream of escape, but also a call to transformation. It asks you to consider how you might hold your pain without breaking your bonds, how you might find freedom within connection. The challenge is to create space for yourself inside the relationships that matter, to be seen and accepted as you are, without pretense or sacrifice. You are not alone in this silent longing. Many carry it, hidden beneath smiles and daily life. And in acknowledging it, in sharing its truth, you take the first step toward healing, not by running away, but by reclaiming your place with honesty and courage. Because love, with all its complexity, is not just about holding on, it is also about knowing when to stay, when to let go, and how to return home to yourself and others, even after the hardest goodbyes. You feel nothing anymore. You realize your passions are dead embers and you can't remember the last time anything sparked. The vibrant flames that once ignited your soul, the thrill of discovery, the rush of creativity, the warmth of connection, have dwindled to faint, cold ashes. It is as if a thick fog has settled over your inner world, smothering the colors and silencing the music that once filled your days. This numbness is not just emptiness. It is the haunting void where feelings once lived, leaving you drifting in a silent gray sea of indifference. The moment you notice this deadening is subtle, almost imperceptible. Perhaps it began as a small sigh after waking, a lack of excitement for things that once brought joy. Gradually, the spark fades, hobbies feel like chores, relationships become distant echoes, ambitions shrink into whispers. You try to grasp at fragments of enthusiasm, but they slip through your fingers like smoke. This feeling is terrifying because it suggests a break in the essential connection to yourself, a disconnect from the passions that define who you are. Psychologists often describe this state as emotional numbness or anhedonia. It is a defense mechanism your mind employs to protect you from overwhelming pain, loss, or burnout. When the world feels too heavy, the heart closes off, shutting down sensations and desires to survive. But survival comes at a cost. The price is a life lived without fire, without that vital energy that propels you forward and makes existence meaningful. You find yourself existing rather than living, moving through days as a shadow of your former self. Examples are everywhere. The artist who no longer feels the thrill of creation, the lover who cannot summon the warmth of affection, the dreamer whose visions have turned to dust. This deadening can be gradual or sudden, triggered by trauma, chronic stress, or emotional exhaustion. It is a silent crisis, often invisible to others, because the mask of normalcy remains intact. You may continue your routines, smile when expected, but inside, the landscape is barren. This emptiness is a paradox. You crave feeling, yet feel incapable of it. You long for passion but are trapped in apathy. This limbo breeds isolation, as you withdraw from connections that once nurtured you, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. You become a ghost in your own life, watching from a distance as others engage fully with the world. The sense of loss is profound, as if a vital part of your soul has gone missing. Yet within this darkness lies the possibility of renewal. Recognizing the dead embers is the first step toward rekindling the flame. Healing begins with compassion for yourself, understanding that numbness is not weakness but a protective response. It invites patience, gentle care, and small acts of reawakening, listening to the quiet whispers of what still stirs inside. Perhaps it is a memory, a sensation, or a fleeting thought that can be nurtured back to life. Therapies, creative expression, and connection with others can fan the dying embers into flame. Sometimes, it is about accepting the slow pace of recovery, knowing that passion does not return overnight. It requires courage to face the void, to sit with the silence and wait for the spark. And when that spark finally ignites, it can burst into a wildfire of renewed purpose and vitality. So if you find yourself feeling nothing anymore, remember, this state is temporary, not a final verdict. Beneath the ashes lies the potential for rebirth. You are not alone in this experience, and your capacity to feel again remains, even if hidden for now. Trust in the resilience of the human spirit. The embers of passion may be faint, but they still glow, waiting for the breath of life to awaken them once more. You'd betray to be free. You carry a heavy weight, though no one sees the burden except you. It's the weight of others' trust, expectations piled so high that breathing feels like a rebellion. You wonder, in quiet moments, if freedom might demand a price too steep, a betrayal so deep it fractures the bonds you hold sacred. You imagine yourself breaking away, slipping out from beneath their gaze, but the thought chills you. Would you hurt those who trust you, simply to escape the weight they place on your shoulders? Trust is a fragile thread woven through relationships, binding you in invisible chains. It's the quiet promise that you will protect, support, remain loyal. But when loyalty becomes a cage, the thread twists tighter, constricting until freedom feels like a forbidden dream. You question, is betraying trust a sin or a desperate act of survival? When the soul suffocates under others' needs, does breaking free justify the wounds left behind? This conflict is not born from cruelty but from a profound human struggle, the clash between the desire to be true to oneself and the obligations that tether you to others. To betray is to shatter trust, yes, but to be trapped beneath it is to lose parts of yourself, piece by piece, until the self you once knew fades into silence. You imagine the faces of those who trust you, their hopeful eyes, their reliance on your steadiness. You know the pain your betrayal would cause, the ripple of broken faith. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a part of you whispers that living solely for their expectations is a slow erosion of your being. Is it not betrayal to lose yourself entirely in the name of loyalty? Freedom beckons with a siren's call, a chance to breathe without burden, to carve a path unbound by the heavy chains of trust. But this freedom is not without cost. The scars of betrayal mark not only those left behind but also the betrayer's soul, stained with guilt, regret, and loss. You wrestle with this paradox. To be free, you may need to break what you once vowed to protect. Throughout history and literature, betrayal is a theme steeped in tragedy and complexity. Judas, Brutus, even tragic heroes who choose escape over sacrifice, each tells a story of the human cost when freedom and loyalty collide. These stories remind us that betrayal is rarely black or white. It lives in the gray spaces where survival, fear, love, and pain intertwine. Yet, in contemplating betrayal, there is also a lesson about boundaries. True loyalty does not demand self-annihilation. It does not ask you to sacrifice your essence to uphold others' trust. Sometimes, the most honest act is to break away, to redefine relationships on terms that honor both parties' needs. Freedom, in this light, becomes not a betrayal but a rebirth. Consider the person trapped in a role not their own, carrying burdens they never chose. When they finally say no, walk away, or speak truths long buried, it may feel like betrayal to others, but to themselves, it is an act of courage, a reclamation of identity. You, too, wrestle with this. The desire to be free pulses beneath your surface, raw and urgent. You fear the hurt your choice might cause, but you also fear the slow death of your spirit under the weight of trust not matched by understanding. This inner turmoil is a testament to your humanity. It shows a heart torn between connection and independence, love and self-preservation. It asks you to reflect deeply on what freedom means, and what you are willing to sacrifice to claim it. Ultimately, you must decide whether to hold the weight or cast it off. And in making that choice, know that freedom is not a single act but a journey, a path marked by difficult decisions, painful reckonings, and, sometimes, the courage to betray not out of malice but out of a profound need to live authentically. You'd erase your memories. You carry a heavy weight, a past so dense with memories that sometimes it feels like a prison from which there is no escape. In quiet moments, your mind drifts toward a haunting fantasy, the possibility of erasing your memories. Not only the painful ones, but even the happiest moments, all wiped clean as if your mind could be a blank slate again. This is not a wish born of cruelty or despair alone, but a deep yearning for freedom, a release from the endless burden of carrying every joy and sorrow, every scar and smile, etched into your being. Memories are the architecture of identity, building the story of who you are. They shape your perceptions, your beliefs, and your emotions. Yet, they can also be chains, tying you to moments of trauma, regret, and loss. The past, no matter how distant, clings stubbornly. It whispers in your quiet hours, colors your fears, and shadows your hopes. The idea of erasing it all, starting anew, becomes an alluring dream, a fantasy of relief from the relentless weight of remembrance. This desire is deeply human. Think of someone haunted by betrayal or trauma, reliving moments that still sting like fresh wounds. The mind replays these scenes, sometimes obsessively, turning pain into a loop with no escape. To wipe away those memories feels like reclaiming control, breaking free from the chains of the past. Yet, paradoxically, it is not only the dark memories you want to erase. Even the happy ones can feel like burdens because they remind you of what was lost or what can never be again. The brightest moments cast the darkest shadows, and forgetting both seems like the only path to peace. From a psychological perspective, this impulse can be seen as a response to overwhelming emotional pain. The brain seeks safety, sometimes by shutting down painful memories or dissociating from them. The idea of actively erasing the past is an extension of this natural defense, a radical act of self-preservation. But memory is complex and intertwined with our sense of self. Erasing memories risks eroding the foundation of who you are, leaving a hollow space where identity once stood. Consider the stories of those who suffer from trauma-related disorders, where memory fragments and distortions create confusion and pain. Some might wish to start fresh, to live without the haunting images of the past. Yet, healing often requires confronting memories, not erasing them. The process of integrating painful experiences into one's life story, though agonizing, is what allows growth and transformation. It is through memory that lessons are learned, resilience is forged, and meaning emerges. Philosophers have long grappled with the relationship between memory and identity. John Locke famously argued that personal identity is tied to continuity of memory. To erase memories would be to erase the self. Yet, others suggest that identity is more fluid, that releasing the past can be a form of rebirth. This tension reflects the complexity of the vanishing self-wish, not just to disappear, but to reconstruct oneself beyond the chains of history. In real life, people experiment with forms of forgetting, through trauma, dissociation, or even technology's promise of erasing unwanted memories. Scientists explore techniques like targeted memory reactivation or suppression, raising profound ethical questions about what it means to forget and remember. The fantasy of erasing memories resonates because it offers a radical solution to human suffering, yet it challenges the very essence of what it means to be human. Yet, despite the longing to erase, memories also carry gifts. They hold the warmth of connection, the sweetness of love, the lessons of survival. Even pain, when understood and integrated, becomes a teacher. The journey is not to wipe memories clean, but to transform their hold on you, from chains into threads woven into a tapestry of resilience and hope. If you ever dream of erasing your memories, know that this wish reveals the depth of your struggle and your desire for peace. It is a call to seek healing, to find ways to carry your past without being crushed by it. Through compassion, therapy, and self-awareness, it is possible to reclaim your story, honoring every moment as part of your unique journey. The past may never be erased, but its power can change. The memories you carry, both dark and light, shape the person you are becoming. In embracing them, there is the possibility of freedom, not from forgetting, but from being defined by what you remember. You're just a story. You suspect you're only a collection of narratives told by others, and you have no real self beneath them. This unsettling thought creeps quietly into your mind, unraveling the threads of identity you once trusted. If your sense of self is shaped by stories whispered, shouted, or assumed by those around you, then who are you truly when the echoes fade? Is there an authentic core beneath the layers of expectation, judgment, and memory, or are you merely a mirror reflecting the world's interpretations? From childhood, we absorb narratives like seeds planted in fertile soil. Family stories, cultural myths, social roles, they weave into the fabric of our identity. You're shy, you're smart, you're a troublemaker, you're the caretaker. These labels become scripts we unconsciously perform, sometimes without realizing how deeply they define us. Over time, these stories can feel like the only reality, blurring the line between external perception and internal truth. Philosophers and psychologists call this phenomenon the narrative self, the idea that identity is constructed through stories we tell ourselves and others. But this raises a haunting question. If the stories come from outside, do they trap us in roles not truly our own? If your life is a patchwork of others' narratives, is the self beneath them even accessible? This suspicion can provoke existential anxiety. It unsettles the foundation of autonomy, freedom, and authenticity. If you are just a story, can you rewrite your script, or are you forever bound by the tales imposed upon you? The tension between who you feel you are and who others say you are becomes a silent battleground. Consider examples. A person labeled the rebel might act out that role even if their true desires lean toward harmony. Or someone cast as the perfectionist might suppress spontaneity, living under a weighty script written by parental expectations. The danger is losing touch with your own voice, mistaking others' narratives for your essence. Yet, this realization can also ignite a profound journey. Recognizing that much of your identity is shaped by external stories gives you the power to question, deconstruct, and eventually rewrite. It invites you to explore beneath the surface, to seek the self that may be obscured but not erased. It calls for courage to peel back layers and sit with the uncomfortable uncertainty of not knowing who you are beyond the stories. Neuroscience reveals that our brains are inherently narrative machines, organizing experiences into coherent plots. This storytelling is essential for meaning-making but can also trap us in repetitive patterns. Breaking free requires mindfulness, reflection, and sometimes therapy, spaces where you can observe your thoughts without automatic acceptance. Art and literature have long wrestled with this theme. Characters who confront their own constructed identities often face disorientation but emerge with new self-understanding. These stories mirror our human quest to find or create an authentic self amid a cacophony of voices. The suspicion that you're just a story does not negate your existence but highlights the fluidity of identity. You are not a fixed entity but a living, evolving narrative capable of change. This perspective shifts the fear of being merely a reflection into an opportunity for active authorship. In embracing this, you begin to notice moments when you feel most you, when your actions, desires, or thoughts break free from imposed scripts. These glimpses are seeds of authenticity, waiting to grow. They remind you that beneath the stories, there may lie a spark of self that transcends them. Ultimately, suspecting you're just a story is a call to explore the depths of your being. It challenges you to move beyond passive acceptance and to actively engage in shaping your identity. Though the narratives told by others have power, they do not have the final say. You have the capacity to become the author of your own story, weaving together threads of influence and originality into a tapestry uniquely your own. The journey is uncertain and often difficult, but within it lies the possibility of discovering a self not confined by stories, but enriched by the freedom to tell new ones. You don't want to be saved. You feel safer in your sadness than you do in hope. Sadness, as heavy as it is familiar. It is a steady companion that doesn't ask much of you beyond its presence. Hope, on the other hand, demands courage, the kind of courage that feels just beyond your reach. To hope is to open a door to uncertainty, to risk disappointment, to face the possibility that the pain you know might be replaced by something unknown and fragile. And sometimes, that demand is simply too much. Sadness feels like a shelter, a refuge from the relentless demands of life. It cushions you, dulls the edges of expectation, and keeps the world at bay. It asks you only to exist within its embrace, without the pressure to act, to change, to strive. There is a strange safety in this stillness, even when it weighs heavy on your chest. It is easier to stay in the known discomfort of sadness than to summon the bravery to step into the unknown light of hope. Think of the moments when sadness has wrapped itself around you like a thick blanket, making the outside world seem distant and unreal. You might linger there, not because you want to be trapped, but because moving toward hope feels like climbing a mountain with no clear summit. The steps are steep, the path uncertain, and your strength feels depleted. So you stay where you are, where sadness feels real, tangible, and manageable. This is not resignation, it is survival. The brain and heart protect you by holding on to what is known. Hope requires vulnerability, the willingness to be exposed to possibility, to risk the pain of unmet expectations. For someone carrying deep wounds or chronic fatigue, that risk is terrifying. The cost of hope can feel higher than the cost of sadness. History and personal stories reveal this tension. Consider the artist who paints somber scenes, not because they have given up, but because sadness is their authentic voice in a world that demands constant optimism. Or the person who retreats into melancholy after loss, finding in it a space where grief can be honored without the pressure to move on. These examples show that sadness can be a place of deep reflection and even strength, a necessary part of the human journey. But sadness can also become a trap, a prison that limits growth and dims possibility. When you hold too tightly to it, you risk losing sight of the light that hope can bring. The challenge is not to force hope prematurely, but to gently nurture the courage needed to face it when the time is right. This requires compassion for yourself and patience with your process. Healing begins when you acknowledge that feeling safer in sadness is understandable and valid. It is a natural response to pain and uncertainty. From this place of acceptance, you can begin to explore small sparks of hope, moments that do not overwhelm but invite curiosity and gentle possibility. You might find hope in quiet places, a sunrise breaking through clouds, a kind word from a stranger, a memory of joy that flickers briefly. These small lights offer invitations, not demands, to open your heart gradually. Each flicker strengthens your courage, each step forward builds your resilience. You are not alone in feeling safer in sadness. Many share this quiet struggle between the comfort of known pain and the risk of hopeful unknowns. In sharing this truth, you find connection and understanding, knowing that your journey is part of the larger human experience. So when you feel the pull to retreat into sadness, honor it. Listen to what it tells you about your limits and your needs. But also remember that hope is not a distant star unreachable. It is a light that can be kindled within you, softly and patiently, when you are ready. Because the courage to hope does not require grand leaps, it begins with a whisper, a breath, a moment of trust that you can move beyond sadness, not by abandoning it, but by carrying it with you into the light of possibility. You fake your remorse. You confess internally that most of your apologies were scripted performances to keep peace, never genuine regret. This realization settles in your chest like a cold stone, heavy and unforgiving. The words you spoke, "Sorry, I'm sorry, please forgive me," were rehearsed lines in a play you didn't want to star in, designed not to heal wounds but to silence conflict. You mastered the art of the apology not as an expression of remorse but as a strategic tool, a mask to hide discomfort and maintain fragile harmony. And behind that mask, you wonder what truth remains, if any at all. It begins with the understanding that apologies, in their purest form, require vulnerability, an admission of fault, an acknowledgement of pain caused, and the willingness to bear the consequences. Genuine remorse stings with honesty and invites reconciliation. But scripted apologies are different. They are a defense mechanism, a way to avoid deeper confrontation, to keep relationships intact at the cost of sincerity. They are words said to appease, not to transform. And over time, these hollow apologies can corrode the fabric of trust, leaving both parties suspended in a limbo of unspoken truths. Consider the emotional labor involved. To perform remorse without feeling it demands detachment from your own emotions. You learn to mimic tone, body language, and phrasing that signal regret, while your mind rehearses the next move, the next excuse. This split between appearance and reality creates a fracture within, a disconnect between who you are and who you pretend to be. You become a prisoner of performance, trapped in an endless cycle of saying what is expected rather than what is real. Examples abound in everyday life. Perhaps you apologized for things you barely understood, simply because the situation demanded it. Maybe you said sorry to avoid arguments, to placate others, or to hasten the end of discomfort. Sometimes, apologies were strategic, designed to shift blame or to maintain control. In relationships, workplaces, or social settings, this pattern repeats, eroding authenticity and deepening emotional distance. The truth hides beneath layers of politeness and ritualized regret. Psychologically, this phenomenon reflects a complex interplay of fear, shame, and self-preservation. Fear of rejection or punishment pushes you to fake remorse. Shame about your actions or yourself makes it easier to hide behind words than confront inner guilt. The performance becomes a shield, protecting you from the vulnerability that true apology demands. But this shield is double-edged, offering temporary safety while sacrificing genuine connection. Over time, the consequences manifest. Those around you may sense the insincerity, even if unspoken. Trust phrase as the pattern continues. You might notice a growing emotional distance, subtle tension, or a sense of alienation. Internally, you wrestle with guilt for faking what should be real, and confusion about your own feelings. You may ask yourself, am I capable of true remorse? Can I face my mistakes honestly? This internal conflict can be a source of deep pain, yet also a catalyst for change. Breaking free from the cycle of fake remorse starts with self-awareness. Acknowledge the performances without judgment. Understand the fears and defenses that led you there. Then, cultivate courage to face your imperfections and mistakes without hiding. Genuine apology is not about perfection. It is about honesty and responsibility. It requires listening, empathy, and a willingness to be vulnerable. When you speak from this place, your words carry weight and open the door to healing. In real life, this process might look like pausing before speaking an apology, reflecting on what you truly feel, and expressing it honestly, even if imperfectly. It may involve difficult conversations where you admit not only the external fault but the internal struggle. Others may respond with surprise, relief, or resistance. But through this honesty, you rebuild trust, repair relationships, and restore your integrity. Remember, apology is not a performance. It is an act of humility and connection. When you embrace this truth, You liberate yourself from the exhausting role of pretending. You invite real change, both within yourself and in your relationships. The power of a sincere apology lies not in perfect words, but in the courage to be genuinely seen and heard. So if you confess to yourself that your apologies have been fake, do not despair. This confession is a beginning, a doorway to authenticity. It is the first step toward breaking the cycle and learning to apologize with your whole heart. And in that journey, you rediscover not only the meaning of remorse but the depth of your own humanity. You'd trade love for power. You wonder if you'd trade love for power, if you'd willingly sacrifice the warmth of affection forever just to never feel powerless again. This thought gnaws at the edges of your mind, a haunting question that exposes the rawest part of your being. Power promises control, safety, dominance, the ability to shape your world, to bend circumstances to your will. Love, by contrast, is unpredictable, vulnerable, and often leaves you exposed to forces beyond your command. In your heart, you know love is a double-edged sword. It offers connection, meaning, and moments of profound joy. Yet, it demands surrender, a vulnerability that can become a liability. To love is to open yourself to pain, rejection, and loss. When you have felt powerless, when circumstances stripped you of control, that vulnerability may feel unbearable. The allure of power becomes intoxicating, promising an end to that helplessness. Throughout history, countless have faced this agonizing choice. Leaders who chose ambition over intimacy, warriors who suppressed tenderness to seize control, even ordinary people who hide their capacity for love behind walls of authority and dominance. Their stories echo the universal human tension between the craving for connection and the hunger for power. Consider the person who grew up in chaos, powerless to protect themselves or those they loved. To escape that void, they might clutch power like a lifeline, sacrificing affection because it feels like a weakness they cannot afford. They trade warmth for armor, emotional openness for control. In doing so, they may gain influence, respect, even fear, but at the cost of intimacy and trust. Yet, this trade is not simple or clean. Power without love often breeds loneliness. The throne you occupy can feel like a prison. The victories you claim may ring hollow when celebrated alone. The control you wield may mask a deep emptiness, an ache for the connection you surrendered. Psychology reveals this conflict in many lives. People who have experienced trauma or abandonment sometimes erect barriers that shut out love, fearing the vulnerability it brings. They pursue power, status, or control as substitutes for the affection they never fully received or felt safe to embrace. This compensation, while protective, can deepen isolation and reinforce the very fear of powerlessness it seeks to escape. But is it truly necessary to sacrifice love to gain power? Or is there a path where both can coexist? Some find a delicate balance. Leaders who lead with compassion, wielding power not to dominate but to protect and uplift. Individuals who embrace vulnerability as strength, finding power in authenticity and emotional courage. These rare souls demonstrate that love and power need not be enemies, but allies in a complex dance. Still, the fear remains. Would you pay the ultimate price? To never love again, to harden your heart so completely that no one can breach your defenses. The question forces you to confront what freedom and safety mean. Is it better to rule your world in isolation, or to risk surrender for the chance at genuine connection? This dilemma touches the core of human existence. The tension between self-preservation and surrender, control and trust, dominance and intimacy. It reveals how deeply our experiences of power and love shape our choices, fears, and desires. Ultimately, the answer is yours to discover. But know this, the journey to find power need not demand the forfeiture of love. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies in embracing vulnerability, in risking loss to gain connection, and in recognizing that true power may emerge from the courage to love fully, even in the face of fear. Because in choosing love, you reclaim a different kind of power, the power to be seen, to be known, and to be truly free. You want to be feared. You find yourself drawn to the idea of being feared. Love, with all its tenderness and vulnerability, often feels fragile, like something easily broken or withdrawn. Fear, by contrast, carries a weight, a solidity that commands attention and respect without question. To be feared is to wield power in its rawest form, to shape the world around you not through softness but through undeniable presence. It is an ancient primal longing that runs beneath the surface of many, this desire to be seen as unshakable, formidable, impossible to ignore. Love requires openness. It demands that you expose your weaknesses, that you trust another with the parts of yourself most tender and hidden. But love is uncertain. It can be given and taken away on a whim, leaving you vulnerable to pain and abandonment. Fear, on the other hand, feels like armor. It creates distance, yes, but it also builds walls strong enough to hold back intrusion and harm. Being feared can feel like the ultimate form of self-protection, a fortress where your dignity and power remain intact no matter what. This desire to be feared is not always conscious or straightforward. Sometimes it hides behind anger, control, or dominance. It surfaces in moments when you feel powerless or unseen, when love has failed to protect or affirm you. Fear becomes a language you can speak fluently, a tool to command respect and prevent further hurt. In a world that often rewards strength and punishes vulnerability, the longing to be feared can feel like the safer, more reliable choice. Psychologically, this impulse connects to survival instincts. When threatened, organisms seek to establish dominance or deterrence to ensure safety. For many, especially those who have faced trauma, rejection, or humiliation, cultivating fear in others is a way to reclaim control and prevent further harm. It transforms vulnerability into power, fragility into strength. Yet this transformation comes at a cost: isolation, loneliness, and the sacrifice of genuine connection. The paradox is clear. Fear keeps people at a distance, protecting you from harm but also from intimacy. Love bridges gaps, invites closeness, but leaves you exposed. Choosing fear over love may feel like choosing armor over skin, safer in battle but colder in peace. This tension is one that many carry quietly within, wrestling with the trade-offs between connection and protection. Consider historical figures or leaders who commanded fear to maintain power, their reputations both revered and feared. Their legacy is often a complex mix of respect, awe, and isolation. Their power was undeniable, but so was their loneliness. On a personal level, people who cultivate fear may find themselves respected, even obeyed, but rarely truly known or loved. Neuroscience reveals that fear activates strong, primal brain circuits tied to survival. It demands attention and triggers respect, or submission, in others. Love activates different circuits, involving trust and bonding, which require vulnerability. The mind's choice between fear and love often reflects past experiences and learned patterns about what feels safest or most achievable. Yet, beneath this desire to be feared often lies a deeper yearning, to be seen, to be acknowledged, to matter. Fear can be a way of demanding recognition when love feels elusive or unreliable. It is a call for respect in a world that sometimes overlooks gentleness. But respect born of fear is fragile, dependent on power rather than true understanding. True strength lies not only in being feared but in allowing oneself to be loved, to be vulnerable without losing dignity. The hardest courage is to show your true self, imperfect, tender, and worthy, not through intimidation but through authenticity. This courage invites connection that fear alone cannot provide. If you admit to wanting to be feared, know that this feeling is part of a complex human landscape, where power, vulnerability, safety, and connection intertwine. It challenges you to explore what you truly seek: control or connection, strength or love. The path forward is not simple, but in facing this truth, you open the door to deeper understanding and, ultimately, to a richer way of being. Your kindness is a weapon. You realize you help people only to make them dependent, so you're never alone again. This revelation settles like a weight in your chest, mixing vulnerability with a raw, unsettling honesty. Kindness, often seen as pure and selfless, here reveals a complex undercurrent, a strategy born from fear, from the desperate longing to avoid solitude. It's a subtle form of control disguised as generosity, a way to weave invisible threads binding others to you, ensuring their presence, their need. At first glance, helping others appears noble, a gift freely given. But when kindness becomes a means to secure connection, it carries a shadow. It creates relationships where dependence replaces mutuality, where the giver's fear of abandonment shapes the dynamics more than genuine care. You may not consciously intend to trap others, yet the impulse to keep loneliness at bay can lead to patterns that limit freedom for both sides. This insight is painful because it challenges your self-image. You want to be kind, to be loved for who you are, not for what you provide. But recognizing that your help can foster dependency forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about your motivations. It's a mirror reflecting insecurities, the primal dread of isolation that drives you to build attachments by any means. Psychologists describe this as a form of attachment insecurity. When you fear being alone, you may unconsciously seek to create bonds based on need rather than equality. This dynamic often leads to codependency, where boundaries blur and the lines between helping and controlling become tangled. The relationship loses balance, and both parties may feel trapped in roles that stifle growth. Examples are common. You might find yourself constantly rescuing friends or family, stepping in to solve problems even when not asked. You offer help that makes others reliant, inadvertently preventing them from developing autonomy. The kindness that once felt like a gift becomes a subtle weapon, a way to secure presence and stave off the silence of solitude. Yet, this realization opens a path to transformation. Awareness is the first step toward change. By acknowledging the underlying fears driving your behavior, you can begin to cultivate healthier patterns. Kindness rooted in respect, generosity without strings attached. This requires courage to face loneliness without immediate escape, to accept your own company and fears without needing others to fill the void. Philosophers and spiritual teachers have long spoken about love and kindness as acts of freedom, not chains. True kindness empowers, uplifts, and respects autonomy. It invites connection without demands, embracing vulnerability without manipulation. When your kindness becomes a weapon, it masks a deeper longing for unconditional belonging. Neuroscience shows that social bonding activates reward centers in the brain, making connection deeply pleasurable and even addictive. This biological craving can intensify the fear of solitude, fueling behaviors aimed at securing attachment at any cost. Understanding this can help you respond with compassion to yourself, recognizing that your actions arise from a fundamental human need. Healing this pattern involves setting boundaries, fostering self-worth independent of others' dependence, and developing comfort in solitude. It means practicing kindness that frees both giver and receiver, allowing relationships to thrive on mutual respect and genuine care. Over time, you learn that you don't need to bind others to avoid loneliness. Rather, you can create space for authentic connection. Ultimately, realizing that your kindness can be a weapon is both humbling and empowering. It shines light on your vulnerabilities and grants you the power to choose differently. You can transform fear into love that liberates, building bonds that nourish rather than entangle. This journey is not simple. It asks for patience, honesty, and self-compassion. But in embracing it, you discover that true connection comes not from making others dependent but from being whole enough to stand alone, and inviting others to stand with you, freely and fully. You'd break them first. You know deep within your bones that you'd rather break the people you love before they ever get the chance to break you. This is a dark, raw truth whispered by the heart's most guarded chambers, a preemptive strike born not from cruelty but from a desperate need for survival. It is the shadowy instinct to wield pain as a shield, to take control of the hurt before it can be inflicted upon you. This urge is not a choice made lightly but forged in the furnace of past betrayals, fears, and wounds that still bleed beneath the surface. Love is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place of trust and safety. But when your heart has been cracked before, when trust has been shattered, the very idea of opening yourself again feels like walking on a razor's edge. The vulnerability love demands feels too dangerous, too fragile to risk without armor. So instead, you armor yourself with the willingness to hurt first, to strike before the strike comes, believing that in breaking them first, you protect what is left of yourself. Imagine a child raised in a home where affection was scarce and punishment was swift. They learn early that love can wound just as deeply as rejection, that to give without defense is to invite pain. This child grows into an adult carrying those lessons, ready to lash out before they can be hurt. It is a heartbreaking cycle, born from a need to protect but often resulting in isolation and regret. Or consider the partner who, at the first sign of tension, withdraws emotionally or uses sharp words, creating distance before the other can. They do not want to hurt, yet fear drives them to preemptive defense. They choose to break first rather than be broken, and in that choice lies both power and profound loneliness. This tendency is often invisible, hidden beneath smiles, rationalizations, or excuses. You might tell yourself that breaking first is justice, a way to keep balance. But the truth is it fractures relationships, deepens wounds, and builds walls thicker than any fortress. The ones you hurt to protect yourself may retreat further, leaving you more isolated and more vulnerable than before. Psychologically, this behavior is rooted in the brain's survival mechanisms. The amygdala, guarding against threats, can trigger fight responses even in the realm of love. Past traumas condition the mind to expect betrayal, prompting defensive aggression to avoid pain. Breaking the cycle requires conscious effort, a willingness to recognize the impulse without surrendering to it. Healing begins with facing the fear beneath the urge to break first, the fear of abandonment, rejection, and exposure. It means sitting with discomfort and learning that vulnerability is not weakness but strength. It involves cultivating trust, not only in others but in your own capacity to withstand pain and heal. There are countless stories of transformation, people who chose to lower their defenses, who embraced openness despite the risk, and who found deeper connection and peace. They teach us that love's true power lies not in preemption but in presence, not in breaking first, but in holding space for pain and healing together. You are not alone in this struggle. Many carry this secret burden, shaped by fear and past hurt. But within you is the potential to shift from breaking to building, from defense to connection. It is a difficult path, requiring courage and patience, but it is the path to freedom. Because the ones you love are not your enemies. They are the mirrors reflecting your fears and your hopes. When you stop breaking them first, you open the door to genuine intimacy, where hearts are fragile but safe, and love is a sanctuary, not a battlefield. You feel above them all. You catch yourself believing you're more awake, more real, and everyone else is just sleepwalking. This conviction rises quietly at first, a subtle sense of distance from those around you, as if you've stepped beyond a veil that others still wear. You see the world with sharper clarity, as though the illusions that blind most have peeled away from your eyes. It's intoxicating and isolating at once, this feeling of superiority, not born from arrogance alone but from a deep, aching need to belong somewhere beyond the fog of ordinary consciousness. You watch people moving through their routines, repeating patterns without question, living lives scripted by unspoken expectations. Their conversations seem shallow, their dreams small, their struggles insignificant. You're convinced that you see the truth beneath the surface, the hidden motives, the silent complacency, the collective trance that dulls their souls. And in this observation, a gulf opens between you and the rest, a silent judgment that says, "I am awake, they are not." But this feeling is a double-edged sword. On one side, it offers a shield, a fortress of clarity and detachment that protects you from the confusion and chaos of the crowd. On the other, it builds walls, isolating you from connection and empathy. The belief that you are above them all can become a prison, locking you in a lonely tower where you observe but cannot belong. You may yearn for understanding but push others away, convinced they cannot comprehend your elevated awareness. Psychologically, this stance can stem from pain and disillusionment. Perhaps you have witnessed hypocrisy, cruelty, or blindness that shattered your faith in others. Or maybe you carry a deep insecurity that masks itself as superiority, a way to protect a fragile self from rejection or insignificance. The truth is often complex. Feeling above others can be both a defense and a prison, a wound disguised as strength. Examples appear in many lives: those who disengage from social bonds, who critique society relentlessly, who isolate themselves behind a veneer of intellectual or moral superiority. Sometimes, it manifests in spiritual awakening, where the seeker believes they alone have glimpsed deeper realities. Other times, it shows as cynicism or nihilism, a despair that leads to distancing oneself from the human condition. Whatever the form, the cost is the same: separation from the very people who make life meaningful. This separation breeds loneliness and misunderstanding. You may find that your judgments alienate even those who care about you. The more you believe you are awake, the more you may struggle to find companionship or love. Because true connection requires meeting others where they are, not where you wish they were. It demands humility, the recognition that no one holds the full truth, and that everyone is on their own journey through the darkness and light. The paradox is profound. To truly be awake is to be present with all of humanity, in all its flawed, beautiful imperfection. It is to shed judgment and embrace empathy, to recognize that everyone carries their own burdens, struggles, and awakenings at their own pace. Awakening is not a pedestal but a path, a shared journey rather than a solitary summit. Breaking free from the illusion of being above others begins with compassion. It means turning inward to understand your own fears, wounds, and desires. It means acknowledging the ways this belief protects you but also confines you. When you soften your gaze, you see that those you judged as sleepwalking are often struggling in ways you do not fully know. Their lives, their dreams, and their pains are real and worthy of respect. In this realization, connection blooms. You begin to listen without judgment, to engage without superiority, and to love without conditions. You find that awakening is not about being above others but being deeply alongside them. It is about sharing the journey, with humility and grace, recognizing that we are all both asleep and awake in different moments. So if you catch yourself feeling above them all, pause and breathe. Remember that true awakening dissolves separation. It invites you to step down from the tower and walk among others, not as a judge, but as a fellow traveler. In this shared path lies the profound truth of being human, imperfect, evolving, connected. You don't want redemption. You suspect that deep down, you don't want redemption. The idea of healing feels less like liberation and more like betrayal. You have become so intertwined with the broken pieces of yourself that to mend them feels like denying the person you've come to know, the one forged in pain, shaped by scars, and defined by survival. Healing threatens to unravel the identity you've built, the narrative you tell yourself about who you are and how you came to be. When you think about redemption, it sounds like a distant promise, almost a fantasy. A light at the end of a tunnel so dark that stepping toward it feels like stepping away from everything you once held dear, your strength, your resilience, your story of endurance. To heal is to rewrite that story, to leave behind the familiar pain that has, paradoxically, become a part of you. And that feels like losing a piece of your soul. It's not that you enjoy suffering. Rather, the brokenness has become a refuge, a known territory amid the chaos. It holds your memories, your lessons, your truths. To give up that brokenness is to risk falling into a void of uncertainty, where the comfort of identity dissolves into unfamiliarity. The person you fear becoming after healing is a stranger, and strangers are terrifying. This tension is echoed in countless lives. People who carry deep wounds often cling to them, not out of stubbornness, but out of fear. Fear that healing will erase the very essence of their existence. They suspect that to be whole is to lose the authenticity carved from their struggles. The broken self, flawed and raw, feels more genuine than a healed facade. Yet, the refusal to seek redemption carries its own weight. It traps you in cycles of pain and isolation, preventing growth and the possibility of peace. The paradox is cruel. You fear healing because it means change, but you also suffer because you remain tethered to the brokenness. Healing does not erase the past, though. It does not deny the person you have become. Instead, it offers a chance to integrate your pain into a new whole, one that honors your journey without being imprisoned by it. Redemption is not betrayal, it is transformation, a reclaiming of your story with new chapters yet to be written. The path to redemption requires courage, the courage to face your fears of loss and change, to step into the unknown and trust that your essence can survive and thrive beyond brokenness. It asks you to imagine a self not defined solely by wounds, but by the strength to heal and grow. If you find yourself resisting redemption, ask yourself what you truly fear losing. And then consider what you might gain: freedom from pain's prison, a broader sense of self, the possibility of joy that does not come at the cost of your identity. You don't have to rush toward healing, but neither do you have to remain captive to brokenness. Redemption is not an erasure of your past, but a bridge to a future where you can be whole, not despite your scars, but because of them.